Hey everybody, welcome to the Sunday show. We are here having a blast. All things considered, it is the final day of August in 2025, 8:31. I have a friend, hi Joe, whose birthday's coming up October 31st, and mine is March 31st. So everything's happening on the 31st now. It's just here we are doing a Sunday show on the 31st. We're having birthdays in different months, of course, but that's the most important day. I'm Matt Dillahunty. This is The Line, and joining me this week, John Gleason. How are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. Had a unexpected weekend without the sun, and so on Friday we went to Top Golf, and we played some Top Golf there, and just kind of been chillaxing, playing Borderlands this weekend, and. Yeah, the new one comes out mid-September, and so we're trying to finish it up.
Yeah. Well, I had a lot of fun. By the way, this is one of the mini shows right here on the Line Network. For those who don't know, the Line is primarily call-in shows on a number of different topics. On the various Sunday shows, and there are multiples, we primarily focus on religion. Do you have a religious belief, a supernatural belief? Do you think you can justify it? Do you have good evidence for it? Do you think there's something wrong with us that we don't believe the same thing you do? Because by and large, if there's some fact about reality, and let's say I believe it and John doesn't, one of us is in some way or another incorrect. We may both be incorrect depending on how you phrase it, but if I believe that pixies show up in my garden and make the flowers bloom and John doesn't think that, well, then the question becomes, why do I believe it? Why doesn't John believe it? How would we go about finding out? And maybe the answer is the best answer is to the question, are there pixies making my flowers bloom? The answer is we don't know, and that's fine too. And so if you're somebody who believes in either one of the traditional God beliefs or is part of one of the world's major religions, or if you're someone who has a belief or any number of different supernatural beliefs that either skeptics and atheists and rationalists wouldn't accept, but you and the people involved in your church or your community or your family or your coven or whatever think are real, by all means, call in and let us know where we've gone wrong. Because, we're going to take a call here in just a second that is ostensibly about why we do what we do. And so I'm not going to answer that ahead of time because we'll have fun on that call. But this is the Sunday show, and we're on from 2 to 5. After the show, you can stay right here on this channel, and you will be automatically redirected to Jimmy Snow's channel for another live show after this one. And then there's the Sunday show After Dark, which takes place at 7 p.m. Central. So we'll move on from here at 5, and then we'll move on from that at 7. There are a bunch of other shows on this network. I do not have the full schedule of who's going to be on this week, but I always know what the shows are. And that's because we do the Sunday show at 2 p.m. Central Sundays, the Sunday show After Dark at 7 p.m. Central. And I think tonight's show is Austin and Owen. And then Monday is Skeptalk. And last week's Skeptalk was Forrest and Justin. I'm not sure who's on this week, but most of the weekday shows start at 6 p.m. Central. Skeptalk is Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central. Skeptalk is Monday at 6 p.m. Central. Chewed Gum is Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central. The Hang Up, my show, is Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central. And I know my guest this week is going to be Mandisa. So it's been a while. Hooray, we get to have Mandisa back. And then the Transatlantic Call-In show is Thursdays at 2 p.m. Central. And I don't know who's going to be on next week, but if you've been accused of transphobia, if you have questions about trans rights or anything else like that, we have an entire show where two actual real live trans people with all of their knowledge and lived experience will be happy to either correct you or help you help others, which is a lot of what we end up doing on these shows. All right. You can go to patreon.com/callline for more information about the organization. You can like, subscribe, follow, do all the cool things here that help us out. But the important thing is we take live calls. And we're here today, as I said, August 31st, 2025. The number 720-619-2288, or there's a link down in the description of how you can call from your a browser on either a computer or cell phone or whatever else. And do you have a good reason for your beliefs, and should we share them? Let's get started. Dave is calling from Washington. Dave either has no pronouns or he has to have pronouns, or they have to have pronouns, or she has to have pronouns, but doesn't seem to have a pronoun preference. Maybe we'll get to that. Maybe we won't. But Dave's a realist. I don't know whether Dave's called in before as a theist and now is saying realist. So Dave, what's going on and what are you calling about? Dave, are you there?
I'm getting a lot of feedback.
You're getting feedback through the phone, or are you watching it somewhere else? Because we didn't hear anything at all from you until we heard.
I'm getting both of you talking at the same time.
Both
yes,
of who?
I'm here.
Are you watching this show on your phone?
I got it. Actually, let me turn off your channel and I'll talk to you on the phone.
Yeah, that's the way we're supposed to do it.
Hang on just a second.
No problem. We've had
okay, now I got you.
Cool.
I had to turn off your video.
What's going on, Dave? What do you want to know?
Well, basically, I call myself a realist because I don't have a better term for it. And I've watched these shows for a little bit, not much. And they make absolutely no sense to me because nothing you'll get for evidence on either side is anything but anecdotal evidence.
So, Dave, let me.
Are you there,
Dave? How do you know that? Is what Matt asked.
I know that because everything an atheist or a theist will say is based on personal experience.
Okay.
There is no proof they can give you.
Name something that isn't based on personal experience when you're reporting.
Well, that's exactly my point. You can't.
Okay. So if everything could ultimately be reduced down to you're just saying what your personal experience is, are you suggesting that we should never have discussions or arguments about information and evidence on any subject? Because all that, whatever you said about the theistic thing is going to be true for every subject, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So
why should I bother? Why should I bother? I don't agree with you that it's all useless. Do you not think we can know and learn things? Do you not think we can figure out when we're being reasonable and when we're not?
Well, of course you can.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that
Dave, stop. Dave, listen. If you agree that we can find out when we're wrong and we can be reasonable and we can be unreasonable and we can identify when we're making those thinking mistakes, isn't that enough reason to have discussions about points of disagreement?
It depends on the disagreement. Do you believe? Well, let me put it to you this way.
I'm sorry, Dave. Your audio quality is really bad. I'm just trying to understand what you said. I asked, do you not think it's worth it to have discussions about areas of disagreement? And I didn't understand what you said after.
I basically said it depends on the area of discussion.
Why?
You want to discuss how?
No, Dave. Why would it matter what the area of discussion is if there's a way for us to find out whether or not we're wrong, or at least discuss why we think someone's wrong.
And again, it depends on the subject matter.
No, I don't, Dave, you're not listening. Maybe
Yes,
that's
I am.
why this is all, no, you're not, which is why this is all confusing to you. When I say, why would it matter? Why would it depend on the subject matter? You can't answer with, it depends on the subject matter. That's not an explanation for why the subject matter matters.
It's amazing.
Wait,
depends
what's
on the
amazing?
subject matter because
What's amazing, Dave? What's amazing, that you didn't listen and said that you were?
no, what's amazing is the fact that well, let me ask you a question. This is a one
No,
about
Dave, you don't get to,
2-3 weeks ago.
Dave, you don't get to ask any questions until you answer the question I asked you.
It depends on the subject matter.
Okay, Dave, now
If you want to have a discussion about whether water's wet, we can have that discussion.
Dave, okay, I'm going to mute you, Dave, because you don't know how to have a discussion, which is not going to go very well here. 2 separate times I've asked you, why does it depend on the subject matter? And both times, even once after being called out for not listening and not giving the appropriate answer, both times you replied with, it depends on the subject matter. So, Dave, for the last time, why does it depend on the subject matter? Please answer that question.
It depends on the subject matter because if you're going to have a discussion, you need to come up with evidences that can be proven or disproven.
No, you're wrong. So,
See,
if the
you guys do that all the
discussion,
time. You're wrong.
no,
Period.
no, you are wrong, and now I'm going to explain to you how you're wrong. This is how this works. See, I paused long enough to make sure that you're actually paying attention, because you have a habit of not paying attention. So, if the issue here is that someone is convinced that a God exists, and I'm not convinced, then the only thing that matters is, can they demonstrate their case? The burden of proof is on them. If they fail to defend the burden of proof, then I am in the correct position by default, because my position is not asserting you are wrong. My position is not asserting there is no God. My position is what you have presented is not sufficient to warrant belief.
Okay, that's why I wanted to ask a question.
Okay, what's the question?
Are you a strong atheist or a weak atheist?
That depends on which God we're talking about. For most atheists, I'm probably a weak. No, absolutely, Dave. Please stop talking over me, miss.
Okay.
Do you recognize that the different God claims that people make for a variety of different religious or supernatural beliefs are in fact different? They have different qualities, correct?
Sure.
Okay. So if somebody comes up with a God claim that is logically contradictory, I would be a strong atheist, because that God is in contradiction with itself and violates the principles of logic. If in fact someone advocates for a God belief that is in contradiction with accepted facts in reality, I would also be a strong atheist on that. Each God claim has its own criteria, and that changes whether or not it is believable or rejectable. Untestable, unfalsifiable gods, one cannot and should not be a strong atheist about, but for testable and falsifiable gods that have been tested or failed to demonstrate their truth, one can be.
Then tell me one falsifiable God.
That's not my job. But if somebody says, my God is the God that makes Matt flap his wings and fly, that's testable and falsifiable, and it has not happened. If somebody says
and it
their
won't
God
ever
is the,
happen.
you don't know that, Dave.
How do you know that?
Yeah, that's why I asked at the beginning. You're the one that made assertions about what's possible to demonstrate and how this is all futile. See, the issue here is that we do this show. Stop, Dave. We do this show to answer your question because we care about whether or not beliefs are justified and what kind of world we live in. And beliefs have an impact on our decisions, and they have an impact for everybody. And unlike you, there are people who can have conversations, understand the burden of proof, and recognize that If there's no way to determine whether or not there's a God, then they are in a position where they are believing something for the particular God they're talking about that isn't justified. And then they can change their mind. Matter of fact, if they're honest, their mind is already changed because belief isn't subject to the will. And so if you find out that you don't have a good reason to believe something, you stop believing it.
So you're telling me belief requires burden of proof?
No, I'm saying that belief is the state of being convinced of something. And being convinced, you can become convinced for good reasons or bad reasons, and you can become convinced with a misunderstanding about the burden of proof. But every claim carries with it a burden of proof.
If it's a claim. A belief is not a claim. A belief has
No, Dave,
the person who believes
Dave,
has
if
faith.
somebody says, Dave, if somebody, no, you're confused. Belief is the state of
No.
accepting a, Dave, you are confused. Please stop saying no. You'll get to speak when I'm done, maybe. A belief,
Okay.
and believing is the state of being convinced that a proposition is true. If you say, I believe X, you are saying you are convinced X is true. X may or may not be true, but that's also independent from whether or not you have good reason to believe that X is true. And so when you say, I believe X is true, my question is going to be, why do you believe that? Because if you can't provide warrant, then your belief is irrational and unjustified. Does that make sense?
Okay. Let's get into the burden of proof then. If a person's making a positive claim.
I'm sorry, Dave, because I asked a question. You're really bad at listening. I asked a question.
No, I'm trying to have a conversation.
No,
you don't want to have.
No, I want to have the conversation. You're really bad at listening and understanding. I just asked you if that makes sense. All you had to do was say yes or no, and then you can move on.
No.
But you didn't do that.
Okay, no, it makes no sense at all.
It doesn't make any sense to you that if somebody believes something, they have accepted it on the basis of some burden of proof.
No. A burden of proof rests on the person making a positive claim.
No.
If a person says, I believe in this, yes.
Dave,
you want me to read?
No, I don't need you to read anything. I need you to listen and really try to focus. I'm going to get John in here in just a second because we're spinning our wheels because you don't understand this. I'm saying, here's a claim. We'll just go with the God claim. Some God exists. That is a claim. Let's see if we can do this. I really want to try and do this. So Dave, would you agree that the statement, some God exists, is a claim?
I'll agree with that, yeah.
Okay.
The person's making a positive claim.
Just stop, Dave. I don't need you to expand on this. I need you to focus, dig in. This is going to be really easy if you just dig in, okay? So you and I both agree that the statement, some God exists, is a claim. Does that claim carry a burden of proof before it should be accepted?
If it's a claim, yes.
Cool. Yeah, cool. If somebody believes that claim and states that they have a claim, have they adopted a burden of proof to justify why they believe it before anyone else should accept it?
Well, you're twisting the words around.
No, sir. I'm not twisting any words around.
Yes,
what I'm doing is leading you to the trough of reason from which you refuse to fucking drink. This is logic 101. Here's a claim. Some God exists. Person A accepts that the claim is true. They don't have to prove it to anybody. But if they say, I believe this claim, and you should believe this claim, then they have adopted a burden of proof to demonstrate that we should believe that claim, correct?
Sure. Because they're making a claim. They're an assertion.
Yes.
They made an assertion about a positive claim. That's a given.
I understand. I don't need you to reiterate it to me, Dave. I've been teaching this for 20 fucking years. If you just dig in, we wouldn't have to repeat this. So, do you believe that there is a God?
I have no proof of one.
I didn't fucking ask you whether you had any proof. No, Dave, did I ask you if you had any proof of a God?
You asked if I believe in a God. If I don't have proof of it.
I didn't ask you if you had proof of a God, did I, Dave?
See, that's the problem.
Dave, I'm muting you because you are now entering dishonest category. I asked you if you believed. I asked you, are you convinced some God exists is a true claim? Then your response to that was absolutely dishonest as fuck, which was to say, I don't have proof of that. I didn't ask you about the status of whether a God exists or whether you had proof for it. I asked if you were convinced of it, which is a yes or no question, because you can become convinced for good reasons or bad reasons. You can become convinced with proof or without proof. And so it's possible for you to acknowledge that you don't have proof or good evidence and believe. And it's possible for you to acknowledge that you don't have good evidence and not believe. Does that make sense?
That makes no sense whatsoever.
Okay.
Because you're missing one
Dave,
important fact.
No, Dave, if that doesn't make sense to you, I cannot help you, but maybe John can. I've talked enough. If the basics of the most simple, hey, do you have a good reason to believe this, is a separate question from, hey, is that true? Those two questions are different. And you can believe something whether you have good evidence or not, whether you have proof or not, whether you think you have proof or not. So when I ask you, do you believe something? That's a yes or no question. There's no reason for you to utter any phoneme at all other than that, because once we establish whether or not you're convinced, my next question would be, why are you convinced? Because then you can say, well, I can't prove it. And then I would say, you know what? I didn't ask you if you could prove it. I asked you why you're convinced. If I say, why are you wet? And you say, I can't prove it's raining, you have not answered the question. I'm sorry that the basics of logic seem to escape you. Maybe John can do better.
Ma'am, maybe we can get back to recenter ourselves here. You're kind of curious as to what's the point in having these discussions, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. Have you ever been convinced away from a position that you previously had?
Only when it came to work.
Only when it came to work. So you're going to tell me that you spent until you started working, like maybe what was that, when you were 15 or 16? You have maintained all of your beliefs since you were a child, and the only beliefs that you have changed have been apparently for work. Is that correct? Like you still believe?
I changed my mind on how I was building something. So
okay, so you still believe in the tooth fairy then?
I never believed in a tooth fairy.
Okay, so you as a child you never believed in a tooth fairy. Can you is there one particular belief that you've previously held that you no longer have?
Just out of curiosity, when my question is, why do you...
No, I'm so sorry. Jesus Christ, this happened to Matt, and now it's happening to me in this conversation. I ask a question, and then you rudely just totally act like I did not ask you a question. Can you please answer a question? Like Santa Claus, fucking Easter Bunny, like something that a child would believe. Have you changed that?
If you want to go that far back, yeah, when I was a young little 5-year-old, yeah.
Okay, good. And your belief changed because of new information, correct?
Uh-huh.
Okay. When we have conversations on here, there are people that are either ignorant of certain pieces of information, or they've just never heard of a good argument that would sway them in an opposite direction. And so that's why at least I engage in these conversations, is because maybe I can convince somebody away from it, or somebody in the audience who has similar questions or has similar positions can also be convinced away from a position because of the arguments that I either make or the information that I present. That's why it's important to have these conversations. Also, I would like to note that a good majority of the US right now thinks that angels are real and that you can pray and stop a bullet. So like I feel like these topics, these conversations are important to sway people away from thinking that the blood of Christ is going to protect them from COVID.
How do you know it doesn't?
Ah,
What is your evidence that you can believe that?
Prayer
Dave?
is magic. It is not going to prevent any disease. Do you think that if prayer had any chance in hell of either preventing disease or stopping a bullet, that, you know, people that are in the middle of prayer would be protected from a bullet?
I didn't say that. I
Dave.
was talking
You
about
asked,
COVID.
how do I know? No, you asked, how do I know that doesn't work? And I'm telling you right now that there are many instances, not just recently, but there are many instances of people praying for something and it not doing shit. It not having a real effect. So when you ask me,
Yeah.
how do you know that prayer doesn't stop COVID? Because I know how viruses fucking work, and I know that prayer doesn't have a chance in hell of having any kind of real effect in reality. So the likelihood of prayer actually doing something is close to nil.
Yeah, and I have a slightly different take, which is really, really close to that, which is all of the evidence we've had is that prayer never provides any evidence that it actually works and in a causal sense. That doesn't prove that it doesn't work in an absolutist sense, but what it means is there's no reason to suspect that it would work. We would need new evidence. And so, Dave, what is it you think
Well,
we're
and
wrong about? Dave, what is it you think we're wrong about?
because every bit of evidence you're going to get from anybody is strictly anecdotal.
Dave. You just completely suck at this. I didn't ask you to make predictions about what evidence we can or can't get, because that's another area where you are absolutely delusional. Just like you were delusional that you've only ever changed your mind on a work thing. You're also delusional in the sense that you think you can predict what evidence will or won't show up in the future or under different circumstances. You'll never get this. I don't need you to make those sorts of predictions. What I asked you, matter of fact, here, let's try this. I'm going to unmute you, Dave. Dave, what question did I ask you?
I ain't going to play that game. You want to state something?
That's because you don't know. That's because you don't know, because you don't listen. I asked you, what do you think we're wrong about? And you ignored it and tried to go on. So this is your only chance, Dave. What do you think we're wrong about, as succinctly as possible?
I think you're wrong about the evidence you will accept or not accept. Because
Okay, I'm going to pause you there. So you think that what we're wrong about is what evidence we're willing to accept. Is that an accurate reflection of what you just said?
basically, yeah.
Cool. If you think these conversations are futile, why did you call in to tell us we're wrong? Do you have a way to demonstrate with evidence that we are wrong about what evidence we ought to accept?
Okay. Well, let's put it
yes or
this
no
way. I don't
question.
know.
That's a yes or no question.
State it again. I don't think it is a yes or no question.
It absolutely is. I asked you, well, I started with, why did you call in? And the question was, do you have evidence to present that will convince us that our standards of evidence are wrong? That's a yes or no question.
It doesn't require evidence to prove that your evidence is right or wrong, because you can't prove your evidence is right or wrong.
Dave, thank you. You called in because you think we're wrong about what evidence we're willing to accept. You have just now acknowledged that you don't have any evidence that would show that we have bad standards of evidence. And you asserted that there's no way to show whether or not we have bad standards of evidence. So you are calling in under the delusion that we're wrong, under the delusion that there's no way to show that we're wrong, and you think all of this is futile. And Dave, when it comes to conversations with you, you're correct. This is a complete waste of everybody's time. Because you can't come in saying, I think you're wrong, but I can't prove it, because all you've done is waste everybody's time.
And I give you some anecdotal evidence then.
I'm not interested in anything. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm not interested in anything from you at all. But I will ask you, why did you say that you don't have preferred pronouns? Is it because any pronoun will do?
Yeah, whatever you want to call me. I don't really care.
Cool. Have a nice day.
You too.
Okay.
Matt, that was a crazy fucking call right there. I mean, like I've only experienced that in the South, where you ask a question and then they just totally ignore you because they have this superiority complex. And I don't know if this is like common throughout, but like, man, that was harsh.
Yeah.
of the caller.
I can summarize the problems that Dave has. So here, and it kind of shows up in a subtle difference in how John and I answered the same question. How do you know prayer doesn't work? John's talking, sorry to speak for you briefly, but it's for clarifying. John's talking about this in a colloquial sense, the way we all would if we weren't in a debate and parsing our language down to the syllable. Whereas frogs don't fly. How do you know frogs don't fly? Have you looked at every frog everywhere on the planet throughout history? Nope. But we have no evidence for frogs flying. We have good reason to think that frogs don't fly. Every time we've tested whether or not frogs could fly, they've all failed to fly. There comes a point where the normative accumulation of evidence doesn't say this is absolutely the case, but says this is overwhelmingly the case. And nobody should accept that frogs can fly, and should actually accept the claim that frogs probably cannot lie, because that's the way belief works. If you think the claim is probably true, you accept the claim. And if you accept that if you think the claim is probably false, then you can reject the claim. And that's not just, I don't accept it. That's actively reject. I am convinced for a number of different gods that they are probably not real, not absolutely not real. I don't have access to absolutes. I'm convinced that frogs don't fly. Oh, I'm convinced that frogs probably don't fly. John is convinced that prayer doesn't work, or prayer probably doesn't work. And I'm in exactly the same boat. But Dave wants to get down to, can you prove it? Absolutely, which is why he thinks he's rational. Dave thinks, I have a God belief. Nobody will ever be able to disprove it. And so I can sit here comfortably, smugly, thinking that I'm intellectually superior to all of the people who reject this God claim. And I won't ever have to provide any evidence. I won't ever have to meet my burden of proof. I can just keep shitting on those other people saying, you just won't accept certain evidence. Yeah, you're right. There's certain things that we will not accept and do not think are sufficient to justify the cause. And if you had good standards of evidence, you would agree with that too. The fact that you had some life-changing event after praying is neat and deserving of inquiry and investigation, but it's not enough to warrant accepting that you found the all-knowing, all-powerful creator of the universe who fixed your alcoholism problem. It needs to be better. There's a difference between saying, I got a new puppy last night, and I got a new fire-breathing pet dragon last night. The nature of those claims are, one of them has mountains of evidence in reality already, such that I'll just take your word for it. And the other one doesn't have much evidence for it at all. And I'm not going to just take you at your word, because you have the same standard of evidence for everything. The reason you accept some things really quickly is because the evidence meter has already filled to max. You have as much evidence as you could possibly have that some mind exists by virtue of having your own mind and experience it. You have as much evidence as you possibly could that other minds exist by your distinct interactions with what appear to be, from your perspective, other minds. We don't have a solution to the problem of hard solipsism. Maybe you're in the matrix, maybe there's no other minds, but in any case, as long as you're working in that framework, you have as much evidence as you could probably hope for that puppies are often pets of people. You don't have that same thing for other claims. And when there's significant disagreement, when there's 1,000 different denominations of one religion and 1,000 different religions at any given time, and none of them can provide anything substantive, then my position is your belief is unwarranted. That is the claim I make in response to people asserting that our standards of evidence are too high. My question is, what should my standards of evidence be? Because if you give me standards of evidence, Dave, that would admit the God you believe in and some other God that is not the same, then your standards of evidence are too low. You have the door open so wide that any number of God claims could get in. Not every God claim, but a good chunk of them. But if your criteria allows in mutually exclusive, contradictory positions, then you don't have a standard. You don't have an evidence criteria. If the question is who murdered this person, and your standards of evidence suggest that the butler did it, the maid did it, and Johnny down the street did it, if all of them fit your standard of evidence, then you do not have a standard of evidence sufficient to conclude one of those three did it or which one did it. This is why we do the show. Because if I'm wrong, I want to know. And if I'm right, I want to like other people to stop being wrong. Because being wrong feels exactly like being right, especially for Dave. Because Dave's sitting there going, I mean, it's hilarious. She wouldn't answer a question. It was, let me get onto this. Oh, can I give you anecdotal evidence? Which is really absurd, not just from someone who knows that we're not just going to accept anecdotal evidence, but also from someone who says there cannot be sufficient evidence. How confused do you have to be to simultaneously say it's impossible, you'll never get evidence for this, but let me give you some anyway? How about instead of trying to give me anecdotal evidence for God, you give me reliable, empirical and examples of philosophical evidence for better standards of evidence than I use. That'd work.
I agree.
We got loads of calls. Draper's calling from Pennsylvania. Pronouns are him. Draper, you're on with John as I take a breath.
Hello?
And enter into Zen mode. How you doing, Draper?
Hey, how's it going, buddy? So I'm calling to answer the question for how to find God or whatever. Is that right? Is that what this is about?
Sure. Yeah. Sounds like a good place to start. How do you or why do you believe in God, or how do you know God, or any of that?
So I mean, I don't know. Some odd years ago, I ran into this guy going through some problems in life. You know what I mean? Decided to give it a whirl, right? Not the God thing, but just the supposed support group or whatever. And basically, he just introduced this idea to me. It was to explain it, it doesn't sound right on its face. You know what I mean? It's like, it says you have to quit playing God. You can't find God if you think you are God. And it was like, well, I mean, that's obviously, I don't think I'm God. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard anybody say, And then he went on to elaborate further. It's like, go ahead. You have a question?
Oh, well, I was just saying, yeah, right. I think it's a stupid thing to say that we're God, but you have a lot of apologists and theists out there that like to claim that atheists consider themselves God, or something like that. So that's really
it's sort of a. Oh, sorry. I didn't. I'm sorry, man. Yeah, it's sort of a play on words. It's almost not meant to be, at least in his view, wasn't meant to be interpreted literally. But basically, it was that underneath we have these scripts running in our heads that suggest we know how the world should be. Like, I think that old ladies shouldn't buy lottery tickets at 8 o'clock in the morning, or I think that gas should only cost this much. I think that people should get married and stay married. I think that we can go on and on and on with all these things of how I think it should be. Don't know where I came up with that. Don't know why I think that. Somewhere along the way, someone whispered in my ear, "Hey, Draper, why don't you decide how the whole world should be? Because you're a smart guy, and you could probably figure all that out." And what it does is it sets the stage for my suffering, for all of my emotional pain. So basically, by having these scripts running in my head.
Connect something for me? Can you connect something for me? How does having, I guess, a shitty position on when people should be allowed to buy a lottery ticket, how does that set you up for suffering? I'm just kind of curious. Like, I don't know how that.
Yeah, sure. And that's a great question. So basically, it's like an expectation. You know what I mean? Like, I think that this is happening the wrong way. And because I think it's wrong, then I think I know what's right. And then it causes disappointment, frustration. And anytime anybody's ever has an emotional problem, basically you can trace it back to some way they think it should be. Like, you can ask anybody in any situation where they're going through something, ask them, well, how should it be? And they'll be able to answer that question for the most part.
Sometimes.
So
how do you know? How do you know which one's right?
Oh God,
I'm trying to figure out how you know which. Like, people have two different opinions on when it's okay to buy lottery. Let's say they have three different opinions on when it's okay to buy lottery tickets. How do you tell which of those is right? And what does any of this have to do with finding God?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, how do I know which one is right? Well, it doesn't matter. Like, basically, if I think it's wrong, and maybe there's 100 right answers, but if there's even one, and that one is currently happening in my current exposures, then I'm going to get upset. I'll notice that.
I didn't ask anything at all about the upset. I understood that. I said it immediately. I'm asking, how do we tell which position, if any, is in fact correct? Because you can be disappointed that the world doesn't match what you would like it to be, and be completely correct and justified in that position.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's yeah. Well, I'm getting to that, but basically, if you want me to just answer real quick, you can't. It's impossible. I don't have the processing power in my brain to calculate what's right or what's wrong or what's good or what's bad. You know what I mean? No human.
I don't understand, because I find it in some cases absolutely trivial. Like, I'm going to say that in 99.9999999999999% of cases, it would be wrong to sexually assault a child. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Okay, and you're leaving some room there, though, right? There's no point.
I'm just I'm just saying, I don't believe that anything is subject to absolute certainty, and so that's why I put it as.
Then I would say you're not playing God. Good job. You're not playing God then. If you're leaving, that's the idea. I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to get a pack of cigarettes, and that's absolutely certain. I put my shoes on, I go out the door. There's a million things that could happen that could get in my way. And if something does, then I might get upset. It sets the stage for me to get upset. But if I say, you're not
listening. You're not listening at all. I understand that disagreement, discontinuity between what you would like to happen, what you expect to happen, and what will happen is problematic. My question had absolutely nothing at all to do with that. It had to do with, how do you figure out what the right answer is? And if you don't have any access to the right answer, how do you know you're not already right?
Well, I mean, at first, when you're doing this, we tell people to just stop managing their lives. You don't know. You have no idea. Unfortunately, your ideas are all kind of screwy. So then later on,
how do you know that that's the case? So you cannot tell people you're wrong by default, because that's not in any way a justified position.
Well, no. If a person if a person doesn't like the way they feel, they're literally not serving their own objective in life.
You're
so they're wrong. They're wrong by default.
You're missing the point here, Draper. I'm not at all asking about, nor am I concerned about whether or not people like reality. I'm talking about what reality is. You cannot say you're wrong about
reality
reality.
is whatever it is. Reality just
Well,
is. It is whatever it
congratulations
is.
for an absolutely useless tautology, Draper. Do you give a shit whether your beliefs are true or whether they feel good? Which is more important?
Well, obviously true. I mean, who would
Okay.
who would
No,
who would say otherwise?
Draper.
I'm going to mute you. No. You just laughed at the suggestion that people might prefer comfort over truth when your entire case that you're making is about asserting or avoiding asserting what is true based entirely on preferences. Your preferences don't match reality. This makes you sad. So you got to give up this notion that you have the right position. That's not how this works. That's entirely possible that someone has a correct position that they cannot demonstrate. And it's also entirely possible that position could be wrong. And if you can't tell which is right or wrong, I'm still trying to figure out what any of this has to do with a God. But there are people out there, and we speak to them frequently, who absolutely care more about whether an idea is comforting than whether it's true. But if you genuinely care about whether it's true, you have to provide a mechanism, a method by which you and we can verify that your true claim is true. Sorry, John, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna pretty much point out what you just did. The entire setup here, Draper, is basically you not providing any kind of justification for any position that you have. In fact, you're making the argument that there are no good justifications for having in any one particular position. It's just simply because that's what you think. And I was gonna initially ask, like, do you just go around and form like gut opinions about how things should be, or do you have reasonable justifications for the things that you think? Because it kind of seems to me like you just sort of think things and you just sort of fly by your seat of your pants, or at least you used to.
I mean, no, I would say, okay, so there's a lot there. So, I mean, what does this have to do with God? I'm going to answer Matt's question, because it supposedly there's a God and he's in control of everything. So if you quit thinking you know how it should be, you stop matching wits with the Almighty, and you stop finding yourself in conflict with reality. You find, the Taoists would say, you end up in step with the Tao, and you're more at peace with the world.
Draper.
Yeah. Sure.
You're aware that not all God concepts fit that model. So you've picked out, of all the possible God concepts, you are focused on supposedly there's a God that's in control of everything. That isn't the only possible God concept. And so now you are judging everything in reality based on a God concept that might not match reality.
Well, I'm not actually really judging anything, but I would argue that every religion is actually trying to arrive at that God's in charge. I don't know, except for maybe Buddhism. Which
don't Draper, please. I never mentioned the word religion. I didn't ask you about religion. Nobody gives a fuck about religion. Religions can form that are entirely free of gods. Religions can have different views on God. And while most of the major religions do adhere to notions about a God that is ostensibly the creator and potentially the controller of all of it, that's not the sum total of God. And so when you decide you're only going to address this category of God, you've already poisoned the well.
I mean, would you want me to give someone else's conception of God? I don't. How would I express this in any other way than the conception that I have?
So I don't have a God. I don't accept a God concept. I'm able to consider whatever God concepts are presented. I'm not just a Baptist atheist or a Catholic atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm unconvinced of any gods that have been presented to me at all. And so when you come in and say, ooh, do you think it'd be silly for someone to call in and say, God is that which is and controls everything, and he's the one that makes poop turn red and fly up into the sky at night, and that's the only God concept that I'm willing to talk about? Wouldn't that be stupid?
Yeah, sure. That's cool. Not. So, is that what you're saying that I'm doing?
Yes, it is. It is, because we're still trying to get to how does your Taoist or whatever view of you have conflict between your expectations and reality? I get that. Everybody has conflict between their expectations and reality. One of the key things of skepticism is to train your brain so that your internal model of reality is as accurate as possible. And because of that, it's based on good standards of evidence. It's based on critical thinking. It's based on empirical evidence for things whenever possible. And so you're just saying somebody told you, set aside the whole stop being God thing because it's silly. I have expectations about reality. My expectations about reality are consistently not coming true. Am I wrong to have those expectations, or are my expectations? So I'm not wrong to have those expectations. So the conflict here is not that I have those expectations; it's that there's a disagreement. But what does that have to do with whether or not there's a God?
Okay. If it is true that right and wrong only exists in the mind of the people who perceive it, then it is not objectively true. So if we're trying to figure out
Draper,
you asked me a question, I'm answering it, bud.
No,
I'm giving you the answer.
No, you're not answering it. No, you're not answering it. I'm trying to save you time. Listen, I didn't ask you about morality. I didn't say anything at all about objective morality. I'm someone whose view of morality is one that it is situational and that there is no absolute foundation of reality. So you're talking about something that is an absolute misrepresentation of my view and does not get to the justification for your view. We're starting with there's a disagreement between what you expect and what there is. And somehow this led you to some belief about a God existing. I want to understand that. But if you're just going to be like, you in your response began with an assumption and a foundation to compare that assumption to, both of which I reject. And that's why it's not going to get us anywhere. That's why I needed to interrupt, because I'm not advocating for moral truth. I'm trying to figure out why you're convinced that there's a God.
I'm trying, well, okay, because as I practiced that, I started to have strange experiences. As I started doing that, there was some weird...
Draper, what's happening in your head right now does not match the actual discussion. Because you just said, in response to me saying, I'm trying to figure out how you got from this disagreement to therefore there's a God, you just started by saying, as I practiced that. Practiced what? What the fuck are you even talking about with practiced that? It's like your brain jumped from the question I asked to the question you wish you had been asked. Please, all I want to know is, if we agree that our internal model of reality doesn't match reality, what about that leads you to conclude that there's a God? That's the question.
Well, there's some steps along the way, Matt. That doesn't lead to that there's a God. That in and of itself doesn't lead to there's a God. It eventually does, but there's some steps along the way.
So it eventually
we have to fill in some blanks here.
Draper, then I'm asking you to give us those fucking steps. Don't give me the narrative that there's steps. Just tell me the fucking steps.
Okay. Are you going to let me finish, or are you just going to keep interrupting me every time?
No, I'm not going to let you finish. I'm going to mute you again right now. And you knew I was going to do this if you've watched the show before, just like everybody else knew I was going to do it. Please, please, please don't whine about the fact you got to put on mute for claiming you were going to do something that you've repeatedly fucking avoided doing. You're the problem here, not us. We are here asking questions which you keep avoiding. So yes, I will mute you, and yes, I'll put you on hold. And then we'll bring you back in to try again. I'm going to unmute you in just a couple of seconds. When I do, I would like you to explain how you get from there's a conflict between people's expectations and the facts about and the apparent facts about reality. This leads to God via this path. I don't want you to whine about getting put on hold. I don't want you to dissemble. I don't want you to distract. I don't want you to sound more like a troll caller. I genuinely would like to understand this. I don't need your fucking narrative about how you think you've been treated or anything else. There are 5 other people on hold right now. Maybe they're sitting there going, would this guy just answer the fucking question? I'd like to not be on hold for an hour while he spins in fucking circles. So I'm going to take you off mute. Please explain to us how the fact that there is conflict, disagreement between people's expectations of reality and the apparent facts about reality eventually leads to a God. Go.
Hello?
Hey there, Draper. You want to answer the question?
Yeah. When people practice the idea where they stop imposing their expectations on the world, they start to have experiences that are inexplicable, that are very strange and bizarre. The frequency of them in magnitude, people try to come up with an explanation for that. I've actually heard callers call into your show that say this, and you guys, when you try to explain it, you go into about coincidences and how they happen and this, that, and the other. But but until you've experienced these things, you can't really. Of course, we would chalk it up to that because that's what I did before it happened to me.
Okay.
As that goes on,
Draper,
we start to ascribe different meaning to that.
Draper.
So it's the Mothman from the Mothman prophecies. Great. Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead.
What are we doing right now? Sorry. Okay. I was trying to stop you, but it was like a freight train. So Draper, now, what experience you started going into the Mothman thing? I don't want to get off in the weeds in that. That feels like a red herring, maybe. But I'm wondering, can you describe some kind of experience that you've had that has directly contributed to your belief in God?
Well, it's a collection of experiences, but if you want me to, it's a kind of a long story, man.
I don't need I need the cliff notes because we don't have 3 days
forever,
to discuss
right. No, I understand. Yeah, it's hard. It's
Can
hard
you
to get all into that. I mean, yeah, an example would be
just fucking answer the question.
I'm sorry, you broke up there. What was that?
I said it'd be quicker if you'd try to fucking answer the question.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm walking with my daughter. We're walking down the street. We're going to a bookstore. It's on a Sunday. It's Father's Day. Okay. This is 2012. As we're walking down the street, we get to the bookstore. It's a Barnes and Noble, and it's on the square in the town that I live in. And the opening to the store, like the front doors are sunken in from the face of the building, right? Probably 6 feet or so. And so we walk in, and it's Sunday. It's about 8 o'clock, so it's closed. It's a really hot day, no wind or nothing like that. I basically said, "Okay, it's closed, Aubrey. Let's go back this way." So we go walking down the street, and as I walk out of the opening in the building, the wind suddenly starts blowing really, really hard, and it just bends the trees down to the ground and pushes me back a step. And I just kind of dip out of the road to get out of the wind because it was, blowing really hard. And it was really like, what the hell? Yeah, it was kind of weird. You know what I mean? So I turn to her and I say, check the door. And then she opens the door. And then we walk into Barnes and Noble's when it's closed, and we're walking around the store. She's running around grabbing books and stuff, picking out stuff. I'm like not buying them all over, but it's keeping her busy.
I got a good.
Well, this goes.
Sorry,
there's more. If you let me to finish here, Chief.
No.
Well, no. Okay, so first of all, anecdotal stories are never going to be convincing to like a skeptic.
I never said they were. Never said. I agree with you. Yeah.
Well, good for you.
Okay. Yeah, good. So first of all, I get that you have like a collection of experiences here, and I get that it's an entire Stephen King novel about it. But see, the thing is that I find that every time somebody says, "Oh, I had these personal experiences that can only be explained by God," and in these cases, and it always comes across as very narcissistic and very like, oh, the world, it's very personal, and the world kind of revolves around me. Because what you're telling me here, whatever ends up happening in your story here, I'm not exactly sure what happened in the Barnes and Noble and the town square, but what you're basically telling me right now is that God apparently cared more about whatever happened to you that day than, preventing the school
No, I'm not
shooting
telling you that.
No, I'm saying that this is what it logically entails here is that God
I would say
apparently
that based
couldn't.
on a certain.
Hold on, I'm not done talking. God damn it. So, but every time these like experiences and everything like that, it logically entails that God apparently cared more about doing whatever He wanted to do for you than it was for him to stop some child dying of bone cancer, or like the most recent shooting at a Catholic school, or any of the school shootings out there. God apparently cared more about farting in your direction and blowing you back towards Barnes and Noble than He did about preventing Susie from dying that day of bone cancer. And so, like, that's why all these anecdotal stories, and I tried to let you go on a little bit there to tell it, all these anecdotal stories, they always come across as narcissistic to me, and thinking that for whatever reason God favored you that day, and that was at the cost of so many different thousands of lives.
I have one quick question, and then I'll let him address this however he wants. Is the fact that it was at a Barnes and Noble relevant to the conclusion that you reached at all?
No, could have just said bookstore. Yeah.
No. Does the fact that it was a bookstore matter?
Yes, no, it does. Yeah, that matters.
Why?
If I got to the rest of the story. Well, because
Why does
there
it
was
matter?
an event.
Why does it? Jesus Christ.
Hello?
So, Draper, yeah, we're here.
Yeah.
Is there any way that you can kind of, like, since it seems to matter, like the end, like whatever event, can you like wrap that up in like maybe 2 to 3 sentences, or does it take like
No, I could try. Yeah. Okay. So there was an event there. Because of the event, I ended up being. It was a grad school program event to get into master's degree, and because I was there and it was something I was interested in, I ended up going and talking to the director. And to summarize, I got into grad school without ever having an associate's, bachelor's. I didn't even have my high school diploma, which everyone said was pretty much impossible. But I have like hundreds of these stories too. So you know what I mean?
Hundreds of stories
a lot cooler.
of you having an extraordinary
hundreds
happen that were. I still don't understand why was the bookstore relevant?
Well, that's because it was the writing program was at the bookstore. It was like, if I told the whole story in its context, it becomes relevant.
No. Saying that there was something that happened at the bookstore is not fucking relevant at all. It happened somewhere, right?
I guess. Yeah, I could leave that detail out.
So when I asked you if it mattered if it was Barnes and Nobles, and you said no, and then I asked if it mattered if it was a bookstore, and you said yes, you should have said no then too, right?
No, I disagree. I mean, you're basing it on the summary of my story. That's summarized.
Please,
yeah, sure.
I'm sorry.
The summarized version. You're right.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. Please explain how the bookstore. Could this have happened anywhere other than a bookstore?
No.
Only bookstores could have events like this where you could actually get accepted into a grad program without a high school diploma. Only bookstores have that, right?
I think so. Yeah, I can't really say.
So?
I haven't traveled the world and gone to.
Maybe that's why you don't have a high school diploma, and why I don't believe you got into grad school without one.
Well,
Draper, if I
don't expect you to believe me, man. You know what I mean?
Right, that's fine.
Call then.
I thought that it was a genuine question on the title of the show. Like, how did you? What was your way? Yeah. How could we find your God?
No,
I thought that was a genuine question. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it wasn't.
I'm sorry that your answer is not genuine. That's the thing here, is that when I ask you questions that try to get to the problems in your flawed epistemology, and the fact that your story in the one example that you gave is patently absurd,
Right.
You ignore the flawed epistemology and be like, well, that's just a summary. Oh, yes, it matters it's a Barnes Noble. Well, no, it doesn't, but it matters it's a bookstore, because a bookstore is the only place where an event, no, that's where the event was supposedly happening, but they could have had that event at a coffee shop, right?
No, I mean, not in my area. You're not going to fit that many people in any coffee shops around here.
Okay.
I mean, I don't, maybe somewhere else there is. I don't know.
Draper. Why does it fucking matter how many people were there?
I don't know. I'm going to ask you that.
I don't
Why
know.
are you
No,
on?
you're not going to ask me any fucking questions for the rest of my life. I just got you back to another problem with your epistemology. And your response was, yeah, it needed to happen in a bookstore, because not in my area, because in my area, you couldn't fit that many people into a coffee shop. And then I said, why does it matter how many people were there? And you proved that you're a dishonest liar, wasting our time. Goodbye. I've done this for a little while. For the people who are like, why does Matt get so mad? That's why.
Yeah.
Guy calls in to tell some bullshit.
Yeah, and I really feel like his conclusion there, like I knew that whatever happened at the bookstore, it wasn't gonna affect like the point that I made, was that it seems incredibly narcissistic for like God to like point him in the direction of getting into a grad school, whereas like, because I feel like it entails, you know, one of two things: either God can't, you know, stop the child with cancer from dying, or he chooses, you know, to allow the child to die from cancer, or one of those two. So basically his graduate degree was way more important than like real life or death situations, and I just find that to be incredibly narcissistic.
Yeah, the thing is, it could be narcissistic or even appear narcissistic and still be a pathway of, oh, this happened, this happened, this happened. And it may be, well, that's narcissistic, and you think that God thinks you're special. And maybe he does think that God thinks he's special. Maybe God does think he's special. The fact that somebody thinks God thinks they're special doesn't disprove a God. But we're not here to disprove God. We're here to say, why do you believe this? And the answer is, oh, I was my friend or myself were falling on some rough times, and somebody told me that if you want to find God, you got to stop acting like God. And that was an epiphany, because we all have these expectations and they don't match reality. And because of that, I went exploring. And then as soon as you give up imposing your expectations on reality, obviously, all of a sudden you have hundreds of weird experiences. The point I wanted to get to was, we've all had weird experiences. Some of them are weirder than others. What's the justification for thinking that your weird experiences are sufficient to conclude that there's a God? But we can't get there because, Captain, I don't have a diploma, but got admitted to a graduate degree program, which I'm just going to flat out call bullshit on. Let's see the documentation. Although I'm not convinced this person has any clue what documentation is. They go to, oh, here's a story. This should prove God. It should prove God to nobody. It shouldn't even prove that you are a rational, sane individual. I mean, if you're going to say this should be a demonstration that should convince people, oh, no, I didn't say that, Matt. I didn't say that this should convince you. Then why did you call? Well, because you're asking the question. And what's the question on below the chat there? Does it say, can we know your God? And what's the question we repeatedly ask? What do you believe and why? What should we believe? Are we wrong? Is it our epistemology? All of this is obvious. I'm sorry if it was your first time calling and you thought this was just, you know, the book club social event where you called in to give your thoughts on how the universe works, but that's not what the show is. Well, I think that if you just set aside your expectations, okay, how do you form better expectations, caller? If all of us are stuck with expectations that don't match reality, how do we figure out what best to do? Because it seems like you realized your expectations weren't matching reality, and then what? There's still nothing there about leads to a God. You had a wonderful event where something completely extraordinary, which I don't believe happened, supposedly happened. Even if I granted the caller, you stopped thinking that you had a good understanding of reality. You opened your mind up to the possibility that you could be wrong, and you walked into an event at a bookstore, and it could only be a bookstore. Doesn't really matter that it was Barnes & Noble. And because of what was going on, somebody offered you admission to a graduate program despite the fact that you don't even have a high school diploma. Cool. I hope your graduate degree is more useful than a theological degree. But your graduate degree as an attempt at theology is useless. But anyway, let's try again. Alicia, she heard Alicia's calling from Ohio, calling about the topic. So, hey, Alicia, you're on with John and Matt. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Oh, getting
Doing
better
good.
every second.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not really sure about what the topic of the question is, but I do have like a family member that watches you guys religiously. And I wanted to call in because I do believe in God and I just wanted to see what it was about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
we're basically wondering why. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, yeah, it's like, can we know your God, and like, how do you know that your God exists? Basically.
I think anybody can know God, and how you know that my God exists. I mean, I feel like that's personal depending on the person. Everybody has their own experience on how they came to God. For one person, they came to God through a dream. For another person, it's an experience. For me, it was based off of my prayers being answered.
Right. So, Alicia, like, do you think that everybody has personal reasons for accepting that the sun exists in the sky, like during the day?
No.
Okay.
Personal.
Do you think is there anything in reality that is subjected to like your own personal reasons? Or maybe am I misunderstanding what you were saying? Because it kind of felt like what you were saying is that, well, God exists, but for different reasons for different people. Is that what you were saying?
No, I think that God exists, but their experience in coming to God might differ. You know what I mean? So for example,
But
for me,
well, sorry for interrupting, but going back to my son example, like both Matt and I right now, we could walk outside of our house, doing the exact same sort of method here. We could walk outside and we can look up and we could see the sun. I'm not saying look at the sun. I'm just saying like we can look out and we can definitely notice that the sun is there. So what I'm hearing from you is that everybody has different methods for understanding that your God exists. Shouldn't it be that, like, for anything that actually exists in reality, shouldn't everybody be able to do the exact same method in order to come to the same like realization that something actually exists?
I mean, I wish it was like that, but it's kind of like this, right? If I put a book in front of 1,000 people, you're gonna have different interpretations of that book that you just read. Some person might.
No. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You're misunderstanding this. If we set a book down in front of 5 people, sure, maybe they have different ideas of what that book is, but the fact that the book exists would be apparent to all 5 of them, right? Like, there's not going to be one person that's like, nope, I don't see a book.
For sure.
So
but here's the
how
thing,
can we know God like that?
Well, here's the thing, though. I don't think anybody can give you an absolute truth that's going to be put in your hands when it comes to God. Why? Because God is a spirit. We're talking about the spiritual realm. These are things that.
Wow. Here's the problem. We ask a particular question, and you ignored it to answer a different question. So if you said, I believe there's a book, and we said, can you demonstrate that there's a book? You would just show us the book. That's whether or not there's a book is completely separate from what people believe about the book. There are plenty of
Mhm.
people who might say the book is good, that the book is bad, that the book is comprehensible, that it's confusing, that it's a story told many times. We're not asking about the opinions about God. We're asking, how do you
Mhm.
demonstrate that there is a God?
Well, what you're talking about, things that are physical. You can see that the book is there,
No,
so you know
no,
it's real.
Nope. I'm not
It,
asking about things that are physical. It doesn't matter to me whether or not God is physical. What matters is you think you have detected God, which means you must believe
Mhm.
in a God that manifests in reality in some detectable way. Otherwise, you would be claiming to be detecting the undetectable. So you believe that there's a God that is detectable. And I'm just asking you, how do we detect that?
Well, how we detect that is by the earth that we're living in. So I
Nope.
don't know what
I
you
live on
believe.
the
They
same
say,
earth. I live on the
but
same earth that you do.
but
There's nothing about
yeah,
this earth that points me to a
have
God.
we have a certain level of oxygen that's livable for human beings on this earth. If that
I'm
changes even
sorry.
a little
I'm
bit, we're all
sorry. I'm sorry, but
so,
that doesn't in any way point to a God. You're
but
presuming
to you it doesn't.
you're presuming things exactly backwards. You're presuming that the amount of oxygen on Earth exists for us rather than what science actually points to, which is we are the type of creatures that can evolve given this particular atmosphere. And that's why us and the atmosphere are compatible, because the Earth shaped what could be shaped. You're
But
presuming
how did
that we were the
how did
goal, or that's we're why oxygen exists.
so how did that creature even come to be scientifically in your mind? Then how did we
And
come to be?
it's not about our
We didn't
mind.
pop here. We did not just
I'm
pop up
sorry.
here.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So first of all, are you saying that my point that I just made was wrong, or are you agreeing with it?
No, I never said that. But I'm asking you a different question now. How did that creature
You
that
don't get to ask me a different question until we reached agreement on that point, right? You're
yeah, I disagreed.
claiming
I agreed.
you're
Yes,
okay. What is your proof that the oxygen level exists for us?
the proof is, well, we can't see oxygen, but it is scientific. Like we
Oh my
we need
God.
oxygen.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
What's
Whether or
what
not we can
what's your
see,
proof that oxygen exists?
whether or not we can, do you think oxygen doesn't exist?
No, I know oxygen exists. That's my point.
How do you
But
know? How do you know oxygen? Alicia, please stop. How do you know oxygen exists?
I know that oxygen exists because based off of our patterns in our body, we need that to survive.
No, that's not
So
true.
it's
That's
there
not,
because
no, Alicia. No, that is not how we know oxygen exists. We don't know, hey, we need X, therefore X must exist. That is logically flawed. We know that oxygen exists because we can measure it and observe its effects.
Mhm. Right. So I agree with that. We can observe and measure the effects. That's why we know it's true. Now,
Then
how
why
do
didn't you
we
give
know?
that answer? Why did you give a fallacious answer instead of that? So now you and I agree that we know that oxygen is real because of scientific investigations that confirm and test it and can identify it completely. Okay, so now oxygen is real. And we
Mhm.
use oxygen, but actually oxygen is not even the bulk of the atmosphere, and 100% oxygen isn't particularly good for us. So we have an atmospheric mix, and we know what the mix of that atmosphere is. Why do we know what the mix of that atmosphere is?
We test it.
Yeah, we use science, right?
Hmm.
Cool.
So, do you
So
believe in the Big Bang? Bang Theory?
the same science, I'm getting ready to answer your question. The same science that we use to confirm that there's oxygen and how much nitrogen is in the atmosphere and all of that, that's those same processes point to
Mhm.
all life on Earth sharing common
Mhm.
ancestry, right down to the genetics. You and I are great apes. We share our genetic code with our other great apes. We are closer cousins to gibbons and chimpanzees than we are to fish. Are we at least in agreement there?
I don't believe in that. I came from an ape. No,
Okay.
We are
I
Then you
believe
are
that
apes.
human
wrong. Then you
beings
are
are traced
wrong.
all the way
Then
back
you are
to
wrong.
the
Then you are wrong and you are denying science. So when we ask you, how can we confirm God? You say you don't believe science. What method should we use to
I
show
do.
whether or not no, you don't believe science. What method should we use to show whether or not I am related to a chimpanzee?
Um, I mean, you can see the relation between humans and apes, but how do you say? So you're saying an
No,
ape was? Why?
Alicia, the question was, how do we tell whether or not we are related to the other great apes?
DNA,
Cool.
genetic
And what
makeup.
does the DNA show with regard to us being related to other great apes?
It shows that we have similarities, but we don't share the same DNA. A
No, no,
human
no.
being is
No,
in an
Alicia,
ape.
you and I don't
I
share
can't
the
say that I'm
same DNA.
sure.
Alicia, you and I don't share the same DNA.
Wait, in what species has there been a mutation like this? That these are two separate species. We human
So
beings have
Alicia,
mutation
human.
like what?
Alicia, you and I don't have the same DNA, do we?
No, we don't.
No, we don't. And I don't have the same DNA as a chimpanzee or an orangutan or a garter snake.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So species, all individuals are prone to having mutations in their DNA, correct?
Yes. That can happen.
Some of the, just stick with yes for now. I'm trying to fix this. Or no, whichever fits. If an individual's genes mutate and they pass that on, it might lead to something negative or something positive for potential offspring, right? Or neutral.
Okay. Yes.
Cool. So over a number of different generations, as people pass on their genes in a species like ours that
Mm-hmm.
breeds with different chromosomes, that
Mm-hmm.
allows us to change more and more as time goes on, right?
Yes. But here's
And
the
so
thing. If that's
no, there's no, but here's the thing, just keep listening.
okay, I guess I can't speak. But go ahead.
That's correct. You can't speak. Shut the fuck up until I'm done and then you can do it. Do you want to learn or not?
I'm hearing you, but you don't have to be rude.
No,
I'm
you're
listening.
not. No, you're not. No, you're not. Just listen. This is really easy. You've made a simple mistake that we all made. Okay. If in fact, how old is the Earth roughly, do you think?
Has to be. I actually don't know that. It's like a billion years, billions
Sure.
years old.
So, for example, young Earth creationists think it's 6 to 10,000 years old, and science says it's about 3.5 to 4 billion years old. Is your view closer to science there than it is to the young Earth creationists?
Possibly. I don't know. So I'm just gonna say
you don't know if the age of the Earth is closer to 10,000 years than it is to 3.5 billion years.
it's probably closer to billions. That's why I said it.
So in the process where life is evolving and changing, is there enough time in that 3.5 billion years for simple self-replicating molecules to lead to multicellular life, to lead to life that diverges such that we get dogs of a bunch of different species, which we've done in a short period of time with us specifically breeding them, and then all of those coming from wolves that came from other mammals, etc. Is that permissible under the science of evolution in that time frame?
Yes.
Cool. Then why don't you believe it?
Because right here, you said that dogs have mutated into different breeds, but that is still a dog.
Yes,
but here's the thing.
but it's not a
Hold
wolf.
on.
I didn't. So first of all, Alicia, I didn't say. So first of all, Alicia, I didn't say the word breeds. You're only listening as it's convenient to what you think you'd like to say next. Okay. I asked about the entire, from self-replicating molecules to molecules that reproduce sexually, to the changes in dogs that we've done just in the period of time that humans have been breeding them has diversity, but that diversity is part of and it is a microcosmic example of a rapid diversity that exists in amongst all the other animals. And I asked you if over the course of the billion years, within the science of evolution, why it was if it was possible to go from self-replicating DNA to the diversity of life that we have now. And you said, here's the problem. Why don't you accept evolution at all?
No, I said that, yes, that is a possibility. But here's the thing where I get a little confused. Why are apes still here if they converted into human beings? There's still two species.
Alicia, this is the most common mistake, and thank you for getting there, because this is what happens. Are your parents still alive?
Yes.
How about your grandparents?
One of them, yes.
Cool. If you came from your parents, why are your parents still here?
Because they haven't aged out yet. They haven't died.
Do you have any siblings?
Yes, I have to.
Cool. So when your parents die out and you and your siblings continue reproducing, your kids and your siblings' kids won't be able to point to their parents as extant things. You got cousins?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Cool. In geometric time, in evolutionary long scale time, your cousins and my cousins, they're also cousins. And we are also cousins to the other great apes, which we've confirmed, because you wanted DNA, by the mutation in chromosome 2 specifically.
Mm-hmm. Right. So then my question becomes, are we the only species that has mutated in this way? Why are we not seeing this with birds?
What do you mean in this way? All of life is constant. All of life is constantly changing, passing on genes that are not necessarily exact duplicates of the genes they had. This is the process with, for example, this is the process, for example, with diploid creatures, where we're combining genetics rather than those that reproduce asexually. It wasn't. Do you realize that Spanish and French both came from Latin?
Okay.
Do you realize that?
But here's my thing.
Do you realize that Jesus fucking Christ?
Yes, I realize it. Yes.
Then why didn't you just say yes?
I said okay. Yes. Okay. You want me to say yes from now? Yes and no. Yes. Yes. Okay.
No, I'd like it to make clear that when you're trying to get to something, that we can get there. So Spanish and French, amongst other languages, Italian, etc., come from Latin. Do you think Do you think that a Latin-speaking parent ever gave birth to a Spanish-speaking child?
No, that's taught.
No, because that's not how evolution works, both in biology and in language. No chimp or great ape gave birth to a human. No Latin-speaking mother ever gave birth to a Spanish-speaking child. What happened is populations split off, and the ones that were speaking this, they all started speaking Latin. This population over here gradually changed their Latin over generations into Spanish until such time as their descendants were speaking a language completely unrecognizable to the ancestors. And other ancestors of Latin-speaking parents got separated over here and were communicating amongst themselves in a smaller population or offset population, and they eventually morphed that into Italian. At no point was any child a different species from its parent, and at no point was any child speaking a different language or reading a different language than its parent. That's the issue here. Jesus Christ, that's the issue here, is that over time, divergence occurs until disparate individuals speaking different languages don't realize that they are actually the descendants of the same people who spoke a different language. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Cool.
It makes
Please continue.
sense. But what does not make sense to me is that we are the only species that has diverted in that way.
If I can answer that real quick, you need to look into several different lines of evolution for several different species now. Like you've got whales. Whales have cousins in dolphins as well as land mammals because whales evolved from a land animal. This land animal moved into a more aquatic environment, and they continued moving further and further out into the aquatic environment until they developed into whales. And of course, this group of animals diverged even further to become the various different species of dolphins out there. And so that's a really good, clear example of that. But you could also look at several other different lines, just about literally any other species on the planet right now you could look at, and you could get examples of this incredible diversity right here, like with giraffes and horses and all that. Like you could totally do like an evolution study on all of these animals and find all these commonalities reaching all the way back to common ancestors. And just like humans, Homo sapiens, we all have a common ancestor with a proto-ape species from which we diverged through different environments that shaped each lineage, producing the different lines of the great apes out there, like the chimpanzees, like Matt was talking about. There's also orangutans and gorillas.
Okay, I get it. Do you know what the original question was about God?
How can you know God? What convinces you of God? And we got down this track of science because I'm trying to, I like, if something exists in this reality, then we should all be able to use the same process in order to realize that that thing exists. And I try to use the example of us looking at the sun, well, not looking at the sun, but us noticing the sun exists. And you use an example of noticing that a book exists. So either one you want to go with right there, that's using the same kind of methodology there that's based in science in order to confirm that something exists in reality. If God does exist in reality, then we should have, a method by which to realize that and to detect God. But you seem to think that there are multiple different ways for people to come to the same conclusion that is not standardized in some kind of way to where anybody can do it. It's all very personal. And I would think that anything that exists in reality isn't personal. It should exist outside of ourselves, thus negating the whole personal aspect of it.
Okay. Can I ask you something? Have you ever prayed before?
Yes.
Oh my
When
God.
when I was in middle school, I prayed that God would take my life. I was curled up on in the fetal position, and he obviously didn't because God doesn't exist. But I prayed multiple times around that too, and God still did nothing.
And I was studying to be a
Do
preacher.
you
I was a
accept the
fundamentalist
fact?
Christian. I was a fundamentalist Christian who got saved at the age of 5 and was active in the church. And everybody in my church, including my parents, thought I was going to be a preacher. And I prayed many, 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 many times.
Mm-hmm. So, and God didn't answer your prayers.
I'm not aware that any prayer in the entire history of the world has been answered by anyone or anything that could reasonably be called a God. What is your evidence that any prayer has ever been answered?
Well, it's a cause and effect. So if I pray for a specific thing and it comes to pass, that can be an answer.
It could be, but how do you know it is? For example, if I have a headache and I pray for it to go away and it goes away, did God cure my headache?
Possibly. If
Possibly.
you pray for it to
How do
change,
you
Possible.
how do you know that that's even a possible answer?
because it's the cause and effect of it. If I pray for something and it comes to pass, that can be a possible
Okay,
reaction.
let me challenge. Let me
No, no,
challenge
no,
this
no,
real
no, no,
quick.
no, 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 no.
Sorry, go
Hang
ahead.
on. I asked, whether or not it meant that God cured my headache. You said that it was possible. And I said, how do you know that it's possible? And you did not give any sort of explanation for how you know that it's possible that God did anything. In order for it to be possible, you must necessarily begin by assuming that a God exists and God can
Right.
do that. You don't get to assume that. That's what we're trying to demonstrate. I could just assume that it's impossible and say, there you go, you're done. But you don't get to assume possibility or impossibility. So how did you reach the conclusion that it's possible for
Well,
God to exist and answer prayer?
so are you assuming that it's not a possibility?
Wow.
You're also
No,
making a.
I literally, you're not even fucking listening, Alicia. I literally just said it might be possible. It might not be possible. Both possibility and impossibility, if being
Yeah.
claimed, need to be demonstrated. What's your fucking demonstration that it's possible? I don't have to prove it's impossible because I'm not claiming it's impossible. I'm literally begging you to show me that it's possible because I'd like to know the truth. Why are you asking me if I can prove it's impossible? Because that only leads to a logical fallacy. Do you understand what logical fallacies are? I'm going to bet no.
Hmm.
A logically fallacious argument, the conclusion cannot be confirmed or reliably viewed as either true or false. We have no way of knowing. All I'm asking you repeatedly, begging, how do you know it's
Hmm.
possible for God to answer prayer?
And I'm agreeing with you. There's no absolute 100%.
You're a
This is from
liar.
God.
You're a
Say that to
liar.
you.
You're a liar. Shut up and listen. You're not agreeing with me. If you were agreeing with me, do you think I'd be sitting here repeating the fucking question and begging you to answer it if you were fucking agreeing with me? Do you think I'm an idiot? Do you think I'm just too stupid to figure out when
I never
someone's
said
agreeing
that.
with me? You said you agreed with me. You did not. Now,
Well,
let's
I
try
can't
this
give you
again.
a.
Let's try this again. Let's try this again. What reason do we have to think it's possible for God to answer prayer?
We don't.
Cool. If we can't assume that it's possible, why are you concluding that it is possible?
Because if I pray for something and I say, God, can I have this, and it comes to pass, that is a possibility in and of itself that I pray for.
No, it's not. I just asked you, and you did this. I just asked you how we can know it's possible. And you said we can't. And now when I ask you why you're accepting it's possible, you're declaring that it is possible and that the way you can know it's possible is that if you ask for something and it comes true, that's a possible answer. No, it's not. You don't get to assume it is. And you've already admitted that you do not and cannot. So I'll ask you again. If you cannot demonstrate that it's possible for God to answer prayer, why do you believe that it's possible for God to answer prayer?
Why do I believe that? Well, I
I'm not
want to say
asking it again, Alicia. If you can't fucking listen to a question, we got a big problem.
okay. We don't know for sure. I don't
I
know
didn't
for
ask
sure.
if we knew for sure. I did not. I'm going to mute you again. I don't think we know anything for sure. I know you've evidently never heard about the show or heard anything else. So let me make this as easy. I don't think we can be absolutely certain about anything at all. It's a big problem in philosophy. I didn't ask you how you were absolutely sure. I didn't ask you how you know. I didn't ask you anything with regarding knowledge as in justified true belief or anything along those lines. You have already acknowledged that we cannot even establish that it is a possibility. And I've asked you 3 fucking times now, if we cannot confirm that it's a possibility, why do you accept that it is a possibility? That's the question. If, for example, you stubbed your toe, is it possible that pixies grabbed your foot and shoved it into the thing that you stubbed your toe into? Is that possible?
And shoved it into the what now?
You stubbed your toe on a coffee table. Is it possible that invisible, intangible pixies that you can't confirm, is it possible that they grabbed your foot and stubbed it into that coffee table?
No.
How do you know it's not possible?
I know it's not possible because, as far as I can see, I can't see that happened.
So you think that possibility is determined by, if you can't see it, it's impossible.
Not necessarily. No.
Well, then why then? I'm throwing up an easy softball here. Here, let me help you. Is it possible that pixies grabbed your foot and shoved it into the coffee table? The answer is, I don't know. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if it's impossible. I have no way of evaluating that. So if you stubbed your toe against a coffee table and you acknowledge that you don't have a reason to conclude that it's possible for pixies to do it, would you still believe that pixies did it? Or that would you believe it's possible that pixies did it?
No.
No. Then why is it when you acknowledge you don't have a way to demonstrate that it's possible for God to do something, you still believe it's possible? Why are you in conflict? Why are you in logical conflict with yourself?
Because one has a cause and effect and one is just an effect.
No, you're wrong. So first of all, not only you're wrong, you're ridiculously wrong. Whether or not something has a cause and effect is irrelevant. In every fucking example that I just gave you, there's cause and effect. The cause is pixies shoved your toe into a table. And when you realize that you can't say that's possible, you also acknowledge it would be irrational for you to say that's a possible explanation. And yet for God, once you realize that you don't have justification for saying it's possible, you still believe it's possible. You are demonstrably, obviously, ridiculously irrational on this subject by your own admission of your own understanding of logic, irrespective of what we tried to describe on logic. So the question is, if you don't have any reason to think that God's a possibility, why are you still convinced that God's a possibility?
Well, I don't know if you're going to accept my answer if I say it. I really don't, because I feel like I've said it over and over. It cuts out by you. And that's not okay.
I'm going to bet money you're about to repeat yourself and be irrational again. Do you care whether or not you're irrational, Alicia? Maybe that's the problem. Do you not care?
I do care.
Okay. Would you prefer that your beliefs be true?
Yes.
Cool. If you have a belief and you have no way of telling it's true or not, can you keep that belief?
Nope.
Okay. How do you tell if it's true that God is possible?
You can't.
Then you have to, by your own admission, stop believing that God is possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll keep it in mind.
So you keep it in mind. So if you can't believe that God's possible, then you can't necessarily have any good reason to believe that it's possible that God answered prayer or God did anything.
You know what? Yeah. God, maybe he's just a fairy tale. Maybe he's just a fairy tale in my mind that I just made it up. God,
maybe not.
We're just living here on this sphere and you're just to live and die.
And that sucks, doesn't it? Except that, would it be better to not live at all?
Yeah, it would be better, because what's stopping me from just taking my life right now? Nothing.
No.
Nothing. Nothing.
I'm going to let John get in here on this because I've talked for a while. This is the thing. Thank you. Finally, Alicia. People keep believing things are possible because of fear that it might not be true. Fear that everything about life is a waste if there's not a God. But the truth is, things are more wasteful in life if there is a God. Without a God, I get to decide what my life is about. I don't have to let my parents or God or the government or a preacher or anybody else say what my life needs to be. I get to live. I get to explore. I get to learn about reality without having the baggage telling me, no, 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 the earth is this old. No, 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 gay sex is wrong. No, 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 this is wrong. No, 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 that's wrong. This is what God wants. This is what God thinks. I don't have to care about any of that. The only thing I have to care about is the actual evidence that best describes the universe, coupled with a caring compassion for other people, because we all have to live here together and share space. There are times when continuing to live is not preferable to dying. And that's one of the reasons why I support organizations like Death with Dignity. When people are suffering to the point that continuing their life is miserable and there's no hope of recovery, I'm in favor of people not only having the right and the individual sovereignty of ending their life, but I also recognize that sometimes people feel that way when that's not the case. When they would miss the next sunrise, they wish they'd stuck around for the next meal. They wish they'd have had a kid. They wish they'd have read a book. They wish they'd have traveled the world. All of these things that they have the opportunity to do, you have no opportunity to do those things if you're not here. And so while it occasionally seems dire and futile, it's not. Life is its own reward. And the fact that it's not fair is just too damn bad. And the fact that it's not perfect is just too damn bad. But nothing about a God cures any of that. All it does, all the God concepts do, is poison that by creating division of us and them. Oh, we're the select ones. We're God's chosen people. We're the ones that God rescued. God cared about me. God saved me. This is the division that comes along of saying, ah, ha, ha, my course to happiness is pathed by a God, and I'm going to do whatever he says. And your course to happiness is wrong because you don't believe in my God. This is what religious ideas, unwarranted ideas, have done to the entirety of human existence. I'd like us to have a better existence. And what that means is we need to eliminate incorrect, unwarranted thoughts, including those about gods and morality and purpose in life. All of those things are lies told to placate people and manipulate them into supporting an idea that cannot demonstrate it's true. We can do better. That's why I keep harping on about whether or not it's true, whether or not we have good reason to think it's true. But I talked to a fuck ton, and I know John wants to get in on this. I'm very sorry, but I can't stop myself.
Alicia, I do want to say that, like, just from my own perspective of somebody that, you know, doesn't believe in God, I want to echo something that, you know, that Matt said right there, in that I feel that, you know, life means so much more to me now that, you know, I don't believe in God, because, you know, everything does really matter to me, as opposed to looking forward to, you know, when I die and going to heaven and all that other kind of stuff. So, like, you know, life does have a lot more value now without any kind of concept of God. But I do want to challenge you, because we have plenty of other, like a lot of other callers to get to. But what I was wanting to say earlier was just that whenever you, for the various instances where you feel like God has answered your prayer and that has confirmed your beliefs about God, I'm just wondering if maybe you can use, you know, the pixies that we've been talking about in this call as sort of like a barometer for, like, you know, trying to know if you really know that God did that or if it was something else. Because, like, I feel like if you can't, like, if there's no way for you to discern between God doing something and pixies doing something that you prayed for, like, let's say they're malevolent pixies that are trying to convince you that this God exists, and so they're wanting to do these things so that you will believe in this God, or something like that. I feel like if you know, God was actually doing these things, and then there would be a way to actually discern that God is actually doing it. If there's no way for you to actually discern between pixies and God, then there's no way for you to know that God actually answered that prayer. I don't know. There's been a lot of talk here. What do you think there, Alicia?
I agree. I guess I should just start living my life on my own terms, doing what I want to do.
If it turns out there's a God and that God needs or wants something from you, I would think the time to think that is when there's good reason. And if God says, nope, too late, you were supposed to believe before you had evidence, that God's a piece of shit, undeserving of attention. Who gets to run around demanding, oh, you believe in me even when I'm hiding from you? God? Okay. Well, that's evil. I mean, that's not love. There may be a God. There could be an evil God, and it could show up right here in my room right now, and it could beat the crap out of me, and it could turn me into whatever, I don't know, a balloon. Yeah. That doesn't make it good. It doesn't mean that it's deserving of respect or admiration or anything.
Right.
But
You're
anyway,
right.
I don't want to keep harping on this. We all got stuff to think about. I appreciate the call, Alicia. Thanks I know it was rough. If it was too rough, I'm genuinely sorry.
Definitely
but it's
challenged my viewpoint for sure.
Thank you. And you gave us stuff to think about in having these conversations in the future, because while we are all prone to making the same mistakes, we don't all describe them in the same way. And so the whole, like, oh, can you show that this is impossible? I'm going to use an example real quick as a parting note of something that a former friend of mine came up with. Well, we know for a fact that there are only even numbers and odd numbers. That's it for whole numbers. And well, even for not whole numbers. But anyway, there's a certain number of blades of grass on the planet right now. I don't know what that number is, but I know that it must be, if we were able to count it, either even or odd. I have no idea which of those is correct, and I don't know how we would go to do it. It is theoretically, it is in principle testable, because it's a countable number. It's just impractical to be able to count it. And so if somebody came up to me and said that they believe the number of blades of grass on the planet is even, and I say, why do you believe that? And they say, because I don't think it's odd. That's a silly answer that doesn't justify their position. And if I ask them, how do you know it's even possible that the number is even? It's pretty easy to answer that, because even and odd are the only possibilities. And we know that because we're talking about numbers. And so we know that it is either the case that God possibly exists, or that it is impossible for a God to exist. And this is going to be different for different gods. The number of blades of grass is definitely even or odd. But if somebody's claiming they have a warranted belief of it, they need to demonstrate that. And if the best they can do is say, well, you can't prove it's odd, then we're stuck. And so this is why possibility needs to be demonstrated, because you can't just go, well, you can't prove it's impossible, because some claims are untestable, which means we have no way of proving that they're not true. And those claims are, the technical word for that is fucking useless, because we're stuck. We can't address it. And so if we can't figure out what the right answer is, it's irrational to hold a position on the right answer other than I don't know.
Yeah, there's proof of odd and even numbers, so it has to be either or of those.
Yep. And the world may never know.
Right.
Cool. Sorry to go down the owl there, but thanks, Alicia. Appreciate it.
All right, bye. Appreciate you.
Take care.
Bye, Alicia.
I'm wow. Call in studio was acting up for a second there. Wouldn't let me end the call at all. Well, here's one. And John, I sent you a message in BMX chat. We all, I'm just going to say it. We all know what I've done this for 20 years. There are some things that are going to change, and some things aren't. This things I'm making, but I'm going to try my absolute best to just let you take this next call, because I feel like not only am I potentially fucking this up, but it's being rude to you. And whether it bothers you or not, it's really starting to bother me, and I know it bothers other people. So my apologies to John, and to everybody watching. But it's like when my brain gets into the, oh my God, we're so fucking close, just one little thing. And the nice thing is, Alicia, unlike other people, cared enough to be like, what am I not getting? What are you not getting? What am I not getting? What are you not? Until we finally got to the point. Now, I don't think Alicia's an atheist or just going to be an atheist. I think Alicia's doing something that a lot of us did in a number of different ways. And Alicia may come out on the other side with a stronger God belief. And hopefully it's for good reason. It's for good evidence there. But when you assume the very thing you're trying to prove, when you assume the possibility of it, that's unwarranted. But the next caller wants to talk about that, and I'm just going to breathe and wait. Because, wait, did they hang up?
Which one were you looking at?
There we go. I got it. Dirk calling from New York. There's pronouns they, them. Dirk wants to talk about the impossibility of there being no God. So, hey, Dirk, you're on with John.
Hey, how you doing, Matt? How you doing, John? This is Dirk Funk. Happy to talk to you guys.
Okay. All right. So how can you prove that it's impossible that there is no God? Also, I want to know, do you recognize
Sure.
that that's not Matt or either Matt or mine position? That there is no God?
What is neither
Like,
Matt nor yours?
Oh, so well, I'm not trying to speak for Matt on
that. Actually, I thought you.
No, so just to clarify here, so that we start off on a good foot, I'm what you would call an agnostic atheist. I don't believe in a God, but I don't know whether or not one exists. So if you can prove that it's impossible for no God to exist, I would be interested in hearing that. So, but as long as you're not thinking that I'm a Gnostic atheist, where I think that either God is definitely absolutely not real. I leave myself open to the possibility of it, even if it's a very slim chance that it could exist. So yeah, as long as we're understanding in that, I think we can have a good conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, actually, I will want to ask you a question on that. So you say you're an agnostic atheist. Why do you simply say, or why do you not simply say you're agnostic? Why do you add the word atheist to
okay, right?
What you say?
I feel like I explained that. So I'm an agnostic because I don't know whether or not a God exists. But as far as my beliefs go, I do not believe in one. I do not believe in one. I do not believe in a God. What would you so knowing my position now, how would you label me? Would you just label me a pure agnostic? Because that doesn't seem to really cover exactly what I said, because I said that I don't believe in one. I don't believe a God exists. But I don't know whether or not one does.
One because you don't know. Thus, you're
no,
agnostic.
that's not what I said. No, that's not what I said. It's not what I fucking said. Can you somehow steel man what I actually said?
Yeah, you're saying you're not making the claim that there is no God, but you don't believe in one.
Right. And additionally, separate. And no, that's correct. But additionally, you're just missing a little bit there. I don't know if one exists or not.
Right. That's what I said prior. Right. You don't know.
Well, I asked you. No. I'm sorry, Dirk. This feels Dirk. Jesus fucking Christ! I'm muting you real quick. So I tried to set this up when I asked you for the steel man. I asked you to steel man it for me, and you said that that the atheist part, like I don't believe in a God, right? And you left off the agnostic part, meaning that I don't know whether or not one exists or not. So maybe we can start. Let's try starting this all over again. Hi, I'm John. This is Matt. We are we don't believe in a God, and we don't know whether or not one exists. You say that you can prove that there being no God is impossible. So welcome, Dirk. Let's try this again.
Sure. How you doing, John? How you doing, Matt? It's nice to talk to some agnostics. I think it's irrational to believe that the human species came to be just by pure randomness or by mutation. I do believe that evolution is true.
Right. I'm sorry.
Go
You're
ahead.
talking about the impossibility of God, but you're wanting to pivot now immediately in the one sentence to an evolution claim. You can be a theistic evolutionist. You can believe that God exists and that God guided evolution in some kind of way and everything like that. So that seems to be like a non-issue for the question of whether or not God exists. So if you want to make the case that God guided evolution, that would be an unfalsifiable claim. There's no way that we can test that or know that or anything like that. So it seems like a pretty a pointless conversation to have.
Well-
Would you like to have an actual beneficial conversation?
Well, if you stop interrupting me, maybe you'll understand that I do believe God guided evolution, right? And I believe that the very fact that you yourself are here would be completely impossible without some sort of higher being guiding
How did
evolution.
so let me ask
that you were born.
Dirk, how do you know that God guided evolution?
Well, that's why I'm calling in to speak about that. Maybe you could stop interrupting, and maybe I could give an argument. So
do you know what a gish gallop is, Dirk? Fuck. Do you? I'm going to ask you. Do you know what a gish gallop is, and can you see the benefits in going one claim at a time rather than, treating this as if it's a debate where you have a 5-minute opening and then I have a 5-minute rebuttal? Like, we're trying to have a conversation here, and there's no way for me to address every single claim that you could put into a 2-minute opening thing, right? So let's please go one topic at a time. I asked you, right, that how do you know that God guided evolution? And I want you to come back. I know that I asked you about gish galloping, but that's really that's pointless to ask right now. But what I want to know is, how do you know that God guided evolution? And I would really love to hear an answer to that. Wait, sorry.
The argument.
No. Sorry, it failed to unmute you for a second. So could you restart?
Okay. Well, yeah, I don't think you actually care to hear the argument, being that you keep interrupting every 5 seconds. But anyways, the argument is that it's impossibly, probabilistically wise, it's impossible for you to actually exist, being that every single micro decision that was made. Well, I mean, it's not math that we could really even comprehend. But if
I'm sorry. No, listen, Dirk, you're totally mucking this up here. No, but I'm just pointing it out here, okay? Where you're not making sense, maybe you can refactor what you're saying here. You're saying that it's statistically and probabilistically impossible.
Listen. How about that? How about you listen?
Shut the fuck up. Who's the host, Dirk? Who's the fucking host? Who's the host?
You're the host. I mean, you're running a weird show here where you don't let the guest speak at all, but go ahead.
No. I'm trying to let you speak.
You're a fucking liar. We're happy to
liar.
Have you speak.
I didn't even make the claim. I couldn't even get a sentence.
You literally just made a claim, dipshit, that we're only interrupting and that we don't care about any of it.
Every 5 seconds. You don't even know
because you're an annoying fucking prick who will not answer the question and wants to just whine like a little fucking bitch that you got fucking muted when you wouldn't answer the question. So I'm done with you whining. John's going to talk to you. Just fucking answer the question and having a conversation, because until you do, it looks like you are nothing but a dishonest fucking troll trying to stir us up. Congratulations, you've succeeded. Your claim, I'm sorry, is that your proof that God exists is that it is impossible for God to not exist, because you are convinced that evolution cannot happen without a God intervening. Curiously, the bulk of scientists don't seem to have that agreement that a God is required for evolution. So, without whining or talking about getting muted, we're going to ask you again, what is your evidence that it is impossible for evolution to occur without a God intervening, not, hey, you believe it. What is the reason that you are convinced that evolution cannot happen without a God intervening? Go.
Am I unmuted? Can I speak now?
I fucking knew it. Goodbye, Dirk. You don't get to talk ever again. I literally, you guys are so predictable. For the people who end up watching this in clip form, this happens all the time. These people aren't real. They're not sincere. Dirk is not a sincere defender or believer of God. Dirk doesn't give a shit about anything other than riling us up and stirring us up. People who genuinely want to have the conversation, first of all, somebody like Alicia will stick through it even when things are getting heated. But also people who are genuinely having the conversation, if, for example, somebody had a good understanding of that particular argument, something that I've dealt with for 20 years, which is that, hey, we can prove X via reductio ad absurdum, via the impossibility of the contrary. We assume that X is true in order to show that it leads to a contradiction, which shows that X isn't true. Vice versa, you can assume that X is not true, and that leads to a contradiction demonstrating that it is true. And so some people want to argue that the justification for believing that a God exists is that it is impossible for evolution by means of natural selection to produce the genetic diversity that we experience without the intervention of God. I don't need you for this, Dirk. I'll do this part. Dirk's position that it's impossible is based on the extraordinary unlikelihood of us resulting from randomness. The problem is, evolution by means of natural selection isn't random and doesn't rely on randomness. Mutations occur randomly. Sometimes mutations occur non-randomly as a result of specific contributing factors that are identifiable. But the process of selection is not random. You've seen maybe those ball sorters to sort, or money sorters to sort coins by different size. You start off with a series of big holes that let everything do it through except for $50. And then you go to slightly smaller holes that let everything through except for quarters. And you keep going down and down and down until you get a dime. The coins are just shuffling around. They're not making any decision. The thing is shaking and moving them. There's no thought involved other than in the creation of the holes. That's something we created in order to sort this. Does that mean that that sort of sorting mechanism always needs an intelligent creator? No, that would be a fallacious argument from analogy. The mere fact that an intelligence can do something doesn't mean an intelligence is required to do something. When you sort through the coins, if you were to compare that to nature, a mother gives birth to a handful of offspring. Some of those are not going to make it. I keep and breed reptiles. Reptiles often lay many eggs. Some of them, by the way, don't lay eggs. There's a difference between boas and pythons, for example. But their strategy is to produce a lot of offspring because they realize not all of those offspring are going to make it. Some of them are going to get eaten by predators. Some of them are going to be unhealthy. Some of them are going to fail to thrive. Some of them are never going to eat. I have 9 brand new baby carpet pythons in the other room. Only 3 of them have eaten, despite the fact that they're now about 3 weeks out of the egg, but they have now all shed out. And we're optimistic, and we will be hand feeding and nurturing them. If they had just been left out in the wild, maybe only 1 or 2 or 3 of them might survive to grow up to reproduce. That's what natural selection is. It is not a decision, I want that one and that one and that one to live. It is, here's the world you're in. Which of you can make it? This is why the early versions of Darwinistic evolution were often described as survival of the fittest. But humans are stupid. And we took fittest to mean, oh, whoever's the beefiest. No, it means whichever creatures can best survive in this environment, those are the fittest for that environment. A fish isn't fit for my living room, and I'm not fit for the bottom of the ocean. Fitness is defined by the criteria. When we look at the human genome, we can see exactly, in some cases, where we are related to other living things on the planet and to what extent. We're so good at it, we've mapped it all out. Do we know all of it? No. But there's no need for any God or any person to intervene. It's not impossible that that would change things. For example, we know Natural selection is different from directed selection, where we breed dogs specifically to get smaller dogs, bigger dogs, flat-faced dogs, dogs that can't breathe or hold themselves up. I breed snakes. We put together different genes to produce different looking snakes. That's the difference between artificial selection, which I called directed a moment ago, and natural selection. But the criteria is not God-directed or person-directed necessarily. Just seeing that X is the outcome doesn't tell you how X is the outcome. And the fact that you might think it's unlikely because look at all the possible things that could have happened, it led to this. No matter how unlikely it is, it absolutely happened. And unless you can show that it is impossible for it to happen without a God, which is exactly what the caller would like to have done or pretended that they would have liked to done, you cannot justify a conclusion that it required a God. But Dirk's not honest. Dirk doesn't know the rest of the argument. Dirk read part of an argument and decided he would sit here and obfuscate and dance around. By the way, I don't know enough about evolution. I don't know enough about biology. And I'm pretty sure that John's not a big old expert on either one of them. We have a passable understanding, which is still an order of magnitude greater than Dirk's or any of the other people who are denying the reality of science. But you can call in and watch, for example, our show on Monday night, which is Skeptalk, where frequently we have biologists, zoologists, physicists, bunches of science experts here to specifically do a better job of explaining how and why we know what we know and I don't even know how you would begin to explain it's impossible for this to happen without intelligence. In order to reach that conclusion, you would have to know what is possible to happen with and without intelligent guidance. How did you determine that? Oh, well, it's just really unlikely. That is not in any way evidence for a God, because here's the thing, Dirk, get ready. I'm gonna blow your fucking mind. How likely is it that a God-directed evolution? Can you quantify that? Can you approximate it? How likely is it that nothing intelligent directed evolution? Can you quantify it? Can you approximate it? You would need to be able to quantify or approximate both of those in order to be able to do a comparison to determine which one is more likely. But you can't even demonstrate that it's possible for a God to exist. You can't even demonstrate that it's possible for a God to intervene in evolution. And the experts on evolution and the scientific facts show that change occurs without any apparent source. And the selection criteria frequently changes, including populations in isolation. There is no need. I can't prove that when I blow my nose, God isn't in there grabbing the boogers and pushing them directly into it, and that my airflow is just a habit of mine. I can't prove that. Is there any reason to think that God's in there picking my boogers for me and hand placing them in the napkin? And when he's done, does God look at me and tell me a joke like, you might think that's a booger, but it's not? Anyway, that's a long way to go to get to a joke, but I got to lighten the mood a little bit. Kelly's calling from Florida. Kelly's pronouns she, her, has possible archaeological proof of God. I'm not even going to ask how you know it's possible. We'll just talk.
Hi, how are you? Okay, so I'm watching. I bet you are. And says I don't want to take up too much of your time.
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
2020. Okay, I was watching the 2024 Cosmic Summit, and they came up with the Göbekli Tepe. Have you had a caller ask you about Göbekli? You're smiling, so I'm guess yes.
Yes.
John said earlier that I would probably describe more of a evolutionary theist. So the timeline is just confusing for me, where Göbekli Tepe is, it doubles the time of the Christian timeline. And I'm a little confused about Genesis 1:26 on who is us and who is our. So this kind of took me into the Gnostics type of
Why?
books
Here,
where there was other gods. There were other gods other than Yahweh.
Kelly. So there's a
Yes,
problem.
I'm sorry.
So you're looking at Genesis 1:26, where I'm assuming that's
Yeah.
let us make God in our image,
Yes.
male and female, created
Yes.
them, etc. So let us, first of all, there's a likelihood that because Hebrew, and particularly ancient Hebrew, is as a language that's different from English, etc., that you're looking at an English translation that makes things more confusing than the original text may have been. However, it may also be the case that the culture was either polytheistic or henotheistic, because they definitely recognized that there were other gods other than theirs, and a good chunk of the Old Testament Bible, where God's talking about this, it doesn't say there are no other gods. It says, I am your God, and I am above all other gods. And so you've seen a potential problem there of who's being talked about or anything else, and it's led you towards kind of Gnostic views and exploring, hey, what could it be, and what's going on here. Here's the thing. I'm trying to avoid the question that I asked a moment ago. What difference does it make what it says in Genesis? Why does that have any relevance at all on whether or not there's a God?
Because I refuse to, thanks to you, I've been watching your show for a while, I refuse to subscribe to Yahweh.
No.
But if there is, I'm sorry.
No, I'm
Go
saying,
ahead.
you brought up Genesis. Why
Yeah.
didn't you bring up the Bhagavad Gita?
I don't know anything about that, but there's also Job, the council. So there's all this
No.
talk about other gods. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
What difference does it make what the Bible says about gods?
I guess because maybe there's some truth to the Old Testament that leaks through, and
Why
like I
would
said,
you
I
think
don't
that?
subscribe to Yahweh.
Why would you think that because there's an old book or even several old books that talk about gods, that they are in fact talking about anything true?
I guess because of things like Globeki Tepe.
What does
And
that have to do? What does that have to do with? So the Bible makes some claims about gods, and you accept it partially. Why accept it at all? Why care what the Bible says? I don't care what the Bible says.
True. So I understand what you're saying. Why do I correlate the two, right? Is that what you're asking?
I'm asking why you brought the Bible up at all. If we have no way of telling if the Bible's claims about gods are true, and the way to tell whether the Bible's claims about gods are true aren't in the Bible, then the Bible becomes irrelevant.
Correct. So what about the books that were left out, the Gnostic Gospels?
Are
They
they
weren't
more
found
relevant?
divine enough to. I mean, I guess they could. That's the question. I guess that's where I'm kind of like, okay, maybe I don't know. Let me ask you this: is there? You said you have other professional archaeological people that will be on on another show. Maybe is there any theological experiments or science going on with Globeki Tepe?
There's no such thing as theological science.
Well,
But I don't think we have any archaeologists on. Here's the thing. What is it about that site that makes you, that in any way addresses whether or not there's a God?
Okay. Here's what it is. That's 10 to 12,000 years old, and according to current academia, we were pre-pottery hunter and gatherers, but yet we still have the technology to cut these huge monolithic stones and erect them. I mean, and then bury it intentionally with fill that they were able to date the fill. It's just kind of a real big mystery to me. So I don't see hunter and gatherers building a site like that.
So your
Well-
personal lack of information on a subject is enough to conclude that a God is possible? Damn it, I said I wouldn't do possible.
What else could be possible?
That's a fallacy.
Oh, sorry.
So, for example, if I said to you, there's a dead body in the house, the butler did it, and you said, why would you think the butler did it? And I said, who else could have? Does that in any way?
Okay, I should have said, because according to our current knowledge of what humans were capable of during that era, we were just hunter and gatherers.
Well, no, but even let's
No?
assume for a second. No, let's assume for a second. So first of all, there's nothing about being a hunter-gatherer society or even near the end of like
Primitive tool.
Doesn't matter. You described
Have
this
you
as a
seen-
mystery. Wow, never mind. Go
Yeah.
ahead, John.
Oh, well, yeah. So, no, you're fine. You're fine. I was just going to ask you, Kelly, real quick. Like, I guess I don't understand. I get that what you're thinking is that, well, how could these hunter gatherers build this site? Gobekli Tepe. That seems to, yeah. But I mean, we've got. We've got evidence from several different cultures in ancient history, even as old as Gobekli Tepe, that exhibit ritualistic practices, even storytelling, and all this other stuff. So it seems like this is just something that would have. This is just a natural development of like human civilizations, right? Even if it is rudimentary. So I guess I don't understand why this is compelling evidence that confirms some aspect of either Genesis, the Hebrew Bible, the Christian faith. I'm wondering if you can of build that.
Yeah, I shouldn't have added the Hebrew Bible to it. I guess I'm looking for an explanation of if we were supposed to be hunter and gatherers, how we were able to build that site.
What's wrong with saying I don't know?
Oh, no, there's nothing wrong with it. That's why, I mean, if you don't know, if I don't know, that's why I was asking you, do you have other people that...
No. I don't know how it happened, and you don't know how it happened. Does that mean that nobody knows? No, it doesn't mean that nobody doesn't know. Okay. And
they stopped excavation.
It also doesn't mean that nobody will ever know, does it?
Right, because they stopped excavation, which was kind of a weird thing too.
What difference it make? Nothing I'm asking you had anything to do with whether or not they stopped excavation. The issue here is we have something that you don't know an answer for, and I don't know an answer for. Somebody might.
Okay.
It might be the case that nobody does. Even if nobody does, that doesn't mean nobody ever will. And whether somebody knows or nobody knows or anything along those lines, that in and of itself cannot be reason to conclude anything about what the right answer is. Because I don't know is I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for taking
Kelly,
my call.
No problem. Well, I was just going to ask real quick, like, what about hunter-gatherer societies make you think that they couldn't have built it?
Have you seen it?
I mean, I've seen pictures of it. I haven't been to it, but I still don't see how that actually answers my question.
It's on a hill, and it's tons of monolithic. I mean, they only found like these little primitive tools around there. They didn't find any signs of agricultural, it was a place of worship or whatever. Only it was right after the mini ice age. So man was probably just getting back up on their feet as a reset. So yeah, I don't know. It's just a mystery, like you said. Nobody knows.
Well, no, it's not that.
I didn't say
Well,
that.
it's not. Yeah, I would. It's not that nobody knows. We just don't know. And also, none of that I feel actually tells us that hunter gatherers couldn't have done it, kind of thing. And I also don't know how that factors into let's just say, for the sake of discussion, hunter gatherers couldn't have done it. What does that say about God? Do you think that God came down and helped them build that?
Yes, some kind of maybe alien God, whatever. Like I said, I don't believe in a particular God, but some kind of intervention.
Right. So it's either aliens or supernatural space wizard. Those are the two options here. And then, of course, hunter-gatherers were in a period of transition between the nomadic culture that they had always experienced into more, progressing in their civilization, their organization, and everything like that.
Well, no, they're actually recovering from the mini ice age. It just happened like a couple hundred years prior.
Right. I don't see how that refutes anything that I just said.
Well, I'm just saying it wasn't like they had thousands of years to progress, and then they were able to build this monolith.
Kelly, people don't spring forth after an ice age with no history and no past. They are still the descendants of the people who were around there. Have you seen the video of the guy who, when everybody was baffled at how Stonehenge could make, basically built an entire replica of Stonehenge by himself in just a relatively short period of time for one person to move those stones around, using nothing else other than tools and information that was available to the people around that time? If we don't know enough about those individuals and what they understood and what their capabilities were, how could we ever conclude that they couldn't do it?
You're right. Okay, well, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Okay. You're welcome, Kelly. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Yep. You too.
There's tons of mysteries. The world's weird. And part of it is people die out and they don't always leave a record. One of the things it's terrifying is the record that we're going to leave behind. We now live in a world where you have more access to more information than ever. And that doesn't mean you have access to more good information, although you do, with respect to or relationarily to how much bad information is. We may be building a world where there's more misinformation and bad information, where it's virtually impossible to identify truth. How will future historians look back on this era and try to figure out what we know, what we didn't know, when we don't know what we knew and didn't know? And we are communicating. We are leaving behind a written record, a video record, an audio record, libraries of information. Will any of that survive? Part of me hopes not. Part of me genuinely hopes that the information and facts about this particular era vanishes with us, because it's fucking embarrassing how the same civilization sent people to the moon and rescued astronauts who had catastrophes happen as they were heading to the moon and managed to recover them safely. Within 50 years of that, the number of people who claim it was all a hoax, that we never went, and who think that the earth is flat is staggering. We are going backward in a number of different ways because people are lazy. Yes, including me. I'm not putting myself above it. We do not have the capacity to investigate all of the stuff that's coming at us. And we are reluctant to acknowledge when we don't have enough information to reach a conclusion. Because I think that if most people had to say, I don't know, as often as that's the right answer, they would convince themselves that they don't know anything. like that they don't have a good understanding of anything. And while we don't have a complete understanding of anything, we have incredible understanding. We know more about the universe than any of our ancestors. I'm no longer convinced that that trend is going to continue. I'm no longer convinced that our progeny will in fact know as much about the universe as we did. I've no longer have any confidence that we're not about to hit a major reset button or the extermination of humankind entirely. As we ignore climate change issues, as we ignore fascist regimes working to take over and deny people their basic rights, as we ignore the basics that we've come to understand about game theory, about economic policy, about what works and what doesn't, about the value of human life, about how best to help people. We set all that aside because I got mine, fuck you if you can't get yours. I'm going to believe whatever it's most comforting for me to believe, whether it's true or not. Rah, 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 rah. I hope we're not doomed. It's part of the reasons why we're here doing this. And I get the frustration from people like Kelly. It's like, wow, here's something that doesn't make sense. And it seems to be consistent with the idea that maybe aliens came down and helped him. Maybe a god came down and helped him. All it's consistent with is we don't necessarily know how it occurred. This is why it was difficult to not do that and address possibility. How do you know that it's possible for a god to help them? How do you know it's possible for aliens to have arrived on Earth and done things? How do you know it's possible that they had advanced technology that we've just lost? It all comes down to, I don't know. And we got to get better at just saying it.
Yeah, and real quick before we move on to our next caller, I did want to inform everybody about this Göbekli Tepe because this is the first time I've heard of it. Just a quick research of mine. This is like, as far as archaeologists go and everything, the current consensus of it is that this area, these ruins represent a crucial point in human history where ritual and religion motivated organization and cooperation among hunter-gatherers, leading eventually to settled life and agriculture. So the third option that I presented to Kelly was actually the consensus of archaeology. Before I even had read that far in my little bit of research here, that it is a crucial point in the development of human civilization in that we were moving between hunter-gatherer nomadic tribes and settled and organized life. So it definitely represents that tipping point there.
By the way, it's now 4:30. Wow. We've got a bunch of calls on. And so rather than having to apologize for not getting to people or apologize to John for going on a 10-minute tirade again, for me, or for apologizing for giving my third sermon about how the world is dying and we need to desperately fix it for the day, let's do something a little bit closer, not to a lightning round. I want to give people their opportunity. John, do you see a call you'd like to go to? And we'll just welcome them, ask them what point they want to make and go.
I think Tonya would maybe be interesting.
Yeah.
Tonya.
So Tanya, pronunciation from Ohio. Tanya's theist wants to talk about what the Bible really says and that you won't hear the truth in church. Okay.
Correct.
Go ahead.
All right. So first of all, the word church was never referring to a building, but so the Bible says that before the return of Jesus, God will send Elijah back, and Elijah restores all things. Part of that's restoring truth to Scripture. So Malachi 4:5-6 says that
Tanya?
God will destroy the land if people don't listen to Elijah's message of repentance.
Tanya?
Yes.
I don't have any reason to care what the Bible says, but how can we tell?
But, okay.
How can, but Jesus, let me finish my question. But how can we tell that your take on the Bible is the right one?
You can't not prove anything to anyone because the truth is either accepted or rejected by each individual.
Tanya. I asked, what question did I ask?
You can't, you're asking people to prove things. You can't prove anything to anyone. That's
absolutely Tanya. Stop talking and listen. First of all, that's not what I asked. And second of all, your assertion that you can't prove anything to anyone is demonstrably false, as many things have been proven to me, many things have been proven to others. Proof
It's
isn't
up to the
necessary.
individual
Stop
to either
talking.
accept it or
Stop
reject
talking.
it.
Yes, Tanya, I'm aware that people will either accept or reject it. But if they accept it, then that means you have in fact proven it to them. You have made a compelling case to them. The fact that it wasn't compelling to somebody else is irrelevant to your statement about you can't prove anything to anyone. That's false. John has proved things to me in the past. I've had views. John had different views. John made a case for his views that convinced me his views were correct. John proved, in the colloquial sense, that his position was a reasonable one. There are other issues where John hasn't convinced me. So I asked you, because I don't want to bore everybody on the planet to tears with a book report from somebody with an esoteric, untestable, unverifiable, special pleading version of what the Bible says. So I'm going to ask you the question again. How can I be confident that what you're telling me about the Bible is in fact accurate? How can
Accepted
I
or
be confident?
rejected by each individual.
Okay. Oh my God. You were talking the whole time and you still are uttering about accepted or rejected from each individual. You are on mute. Tanya, listen, I'm going to ask you this question. I need an
Matt, I'm
answer
so
to this
sorry.
question because the conversation will never move from this instant in its progression until I get an answer to this question. So, Tanya, you called in to express a particular view that you think is true about the Bible. How can I be confident, reasonably confident, that what you're telling me is true, likely true, and not just the ravings of a lunatic?
Present
How?
my side, and then you decide.
Okay. You were talking that whole time too. I'm going to unmute you, Tanya. Don't say anything. Don't say anything until after I've unmuted you, and then I will ask you the question. If you say anything before I've unmuted you and asked you the question, I will hang up because I feel that this is starting to be unfair. I'm unmuting you now.
About the truth.
Okay.
You have a satanic agenda.
I'm sorry. That was loud of me.
There's a satanic agenda. Like literally you were incapable of realizing that you were on mute. I'm genuinely sorry. If in fact you're right about what the Bible says and what the real truth is, cool. Once you find a way to actually demonstrate that to people, call us back. Until then, do not call. Because my suspicion is that you're confused and perhaps in need of some help. And so I hope you find that, which is a good time to remind people that if you're struggling with things related to religion, you can reach out to recoveringfromreligion.org. And if you're struggling severely, where you think you might need some therapy, I'd recommend that you try the Secular Therapy Project. Secular Therapy Project is associated with Recovering from Religion. And what it is it is a network of licensed, science-based therapists that are not going to try to shove a religion down your throat when you're seeking help. I use the Secular Therapy Project to find my new therapist. Things are going great, by the way. Good update. We've come up with some good projects to work on. The fact that I pounded my table earlier and got irritated over stuff means that I'm not done with the therapy thing. The fact that I'm still worried about the same things I was worried before that have nothing to do with shows, not done with therapy, but things genuinely are getting better. And for the people who need that, and let's be honest, in 2025, I'd say it's a vanishingly small minority that probably couldn't benefit from therapy of some sort. But all right, we've only got like 23 minutes left. I want to make sure we get to these. I don't want to do lightning round, but let's try this. Michelle's calling from Illinois. Michelle's a theist with questioning beliefs and Well, it says here, Michelle, that you want my input on something, but would you be okay with John's input with maybe me not being able to shut up?
Sure. Would you still comment?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So
Try stopping me.
first of oh, so do you want me to talk, or you want John to talk?
You go right ahead, and John and or I will jump in as needed. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's really nice to meet you. I hope you had a nice day. I actually really admire a lot of your arguments. I am a Christian. I started to do a lot of research, personal research, and there's a lot of things that you do say that I agree. But the thing that makes me like hold on to God, that I know God is real, is because there's a lot of things, yes, I don't understand. And I've been reading the Bible on my own. There's a lot of questions that I would have. Even when I'll talk to other Christians, they literally cannot answer. Yes, they are trying to justify other problematic things it is unacceptable, because I'm just like, okay, why would God do that? Why is this okay? Why are good people suffering? Why are evil people prospering? But a thing that makes me know, like, okay, God is real, is because I've had moments where someone who did not know me at all, right? A prophet, or let's say someone who is not in the line of God, right? A diviner or a psychic, they did not know me from anywhere, and then they start to reveal very personal things that has happened to me, right? And I know
Like what?
you.
Well, can I? So, Michelle,
Yeah.
well, have you ever? Sorry, I'll let you finish your story here, but have you ever heard of cold reading?
To a certain extent, yes.
Okay, well, I mean, there's just like cold reading is a very popular thing amongst the psychics and everything like that. Like they can kind of judge based on like your facial expressions and your demeanor. And I don't know, but Matt would probably know more about the cold reading than me. But it seems like maybe this person was just cold reading you and was just telling you things that it seemed like you wanted to hear. Is I feel like how they normally do it, but yeah, I would look into cold reading and see how that lines up with your experience.
Okay, because there was one instance, right? And this person, she wasn't on the line of, she didn't claim Christian, but I knew she was she was like, I think she dabbled in witchcraft, right? But I've had a few instances of someone like you have to pay them, right? And then when you pay them, they literally morph into something, and they're now saying things to you, especially like for me coming from an African background, where someone is now morphing into a different person and they're exhibiting a different characteristic altogether, even how they talk, and you don't tell them nothing about you, and they start to say very personal things.
Right. So Michelle, how can you discern that from like acting? Like, how do you know that they weren't just acting a different way, or they were acting in a way that was very theatrical and everything like that?
Okay, so let's say they are acting, but how is the cold reading so accurate where they're able to even identify maybe a very specific private issue, let's say in terms of abuse? I had one lady, I didn't know her from nowhere. I didn't know her. And I remember one day she came up. Okay. And she came up to me and she said something very personal that I never told anybody, and it had to do with abuse. And she was very specific about it and the person.
How
and
specific?
I didn't know her from anywhere. Very.
Okay.
Like she told me
I don't know
the
how to
age that it
judge. I don't
happened.
know how to. I don't know how to judge Very, and I'm not asking you to expose anything private about your life. Here's the thing.
Right.
And John was pointing out the potential of cold reading. There's also hot reading. There's also frauds. Whether or not you know someone doesn't tell you anything at all about what they know about you or who they might have heard it from or how they might have found out. if we made a list of all the, like somebody came up and told you something private about your life, but that private thing, I'm assuming, involved another person, right? Because it can't be you're not abusing yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So there are definitely other people involved, and we forget that part because we look at, hey, this happened to me, and I'm the only one that knows it. But no, you're not. For example, everybody who was at Epstein Island that participated in that stuff knows about it on both sides. Trump knows whether or not he's a pederast. Trump knows not only that he is in the Epstein files, but to what extent and what it's likely about. It's wrong to say to suggest that because you aren't directly familiar with someone that they might not have found a way. I've heard of people. I cannot tell you what happened in your scenario, and probably nobody can other than the person who came up to you. First of all, there are some people who ramble and would say the same thing to 100 people walking down the street. You often, they might see them with sandwich boards, signboards, and stuff like that. And so they're just rambling. And occasionally it's a hit for somebody, even things that are specific. When the psychic readers, you got John, who is the biggest douche in the universe thing. He has a big audience in front of him. And so he speaks kind of generally, but he speaks more specific than he needs to. He speaks more specifically than he needs to because he can always back off of it. So he might start with I'm somewhere over in this area over here. There's this person. I'm not necessarily, no, I don't think it's you, but someone over here, there's someone that recently passed for you. And I'm getting a Michael in something along those lines. And as long as you're in that general area, anyone in there close to that general area with anything that's close to someone that passed whose name is Michael and whatever, they're likely to react in a way that they're not even aware of. We don't all have good poker faces. I get that you weren't in that scenario. It's not like you went to a John Edwards event and he was specific. But some people do research on people specifically to con them. Some people get lucky, and instead of having everybody in one room where you can talk to 100 people at once, if you talk to 100 people over the course of the day, it's going to seem way more impressive. Like if you were sitting in a theater with a bunch of people and somebody uttered something specific or that as specific as you think it is about you, that would be impressive. But it's way more impressive if they said it directly to you just walking down the street, right? Because that just seems outlandish. And it was just ridiculous to the 99 other people that they said it to before then. Those people didn't get a hit. And so if you count the hits and ignore the misses, the sharpshooter fallacy, you get to impressive things. The issue here is not that person was lying or cheating or nothing. It is until you can actually test it and replicate it to show that there's an actual phenomenon there, it is not warranted to think that merely because you don't have an explanation for it, that it's likely that there was a God involved.
Got you. So I have a question, Matt. Do you believe in the spiritual, or you don't think any of it is real?
I don't even know what spiritual means because it's used in so many different ways by so many different people. But I have no reason to believe that anything spiritual, anything supernatural exists at all. I don't even know how you could test or verify it.
Okay, because what about, and I know there are scientific studies for, dreams and revelations and all of these things. But what about, can I give you an example of something that happened to me? And I know it can't be tested because I know I watch a lot of your shows and I know that one of the biggest things, and I do agree with you.
As long as you don't spend a lot of time on it, you can give whatever example you want. I just don't like to pry in someone's life. So if you've got an example you think's good, cool.
Okay, well, I've had a moment where I was sleeping and something was calling to me. Something was calling to me where something even, like I was living by myself and I heard some type of presence call my name, right? And
did you hear it with your ears or in your head?
my ears. My ears.
So you heard it. So you understand, for example, there are some people who might hear an audible voice, and there are other people who hear a non-audible voice, like just in my head, like like a conscience type thing. Or
Right. No, this was real.
consciousness, yeah.
Yeah, this.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
heard with your ears, and so was there
Right.
anybody else in there to hear it?
No, I was by myself.
Okay. Keep going.
I was by myself, and I heard an audible voice say my name, and then something even touched me as well. And once I said Jesus, it's like everything stopped. But of course,
Cool.
I understand where you're coming from. Where can I prove this? No, because it's a personal story. Because a lot of the things that you say, I hear you, and like even with to a point like I was deconstructing because I know there's such things as religious psychosis where, I'm so deep into it. I'm reading things, I'm reading the Bible and I'm trying to understand like, okay, this is not making sense and stuff. And even with the example I just gave to you, I can't prove it scientifically to you that, oh my gosh,
can't
like
prove it
this
at
is
all.
what happened to me. Yeah, because
you can't even prove to yourself that you heard something with your ears, because we already know it's possible for people to have auditory hallucinations where they would say, I heard this with my ears, even though there is no
Right.
evidence to support the notion they heard it with their ears. And so if you're alone and you hear something with your ears rather than just in your head, how do you know that your brain didn't just lie to you and tell you that you heard it with your ears when in fact it was a voice in your head? And by the way, even if you heard a voice with your ears, what conclusion can you reach about it? I don't know. I certainly can't. And did it touch, it touched you? Okay. How do you know that the voice touched you? The physical sensation of being touched could also be a lie. It could be independent from the perceived physical experience of the voice. If it's a God, it makes no sense to me, because that means God's fucking with you. God has decided, hey, I'm gonna talk to this person and touch them, but not give any actual evidence. That's gaslighting in the extreme. If it's a demon, that would potentially make more sense, because a demon might want to fuck with you and say, "Oh, watch this! I'm gonna make this person think they're going crazy." Except that one of the things that's been pointed out is the best trick the devil ever pulled was making everyone think he doesn't exist. If the devil God scenario that is involved in a number of different versions of Christianity, for example, is a real deal, and then it's in the devil's best interest strategically for you to not believe any of this, because then he wins by default. That's why people say I'm the devil, because I don't try to prove that there is no God. My position is nobody can prove there is a God, and that means all those people who believe it are unjustified. They are irrational. And boy, does this piss off the people that I do debates with, so much so that they almost never ask for debates anymore. Even like there's a Christian that I debated not too long ago, smart person, nice person. We got along great. We were going to do some content together, but then he got sucked up into the machine of let me shovel out apologist content and be dismissive of the atheists and mock them. And so that's just probably not going to happen. But at the end of the day,
yeah, I think I know what you're talking
you
about.
experienced something. Whether or not that something was internal or external, you can't really know, and you don't have a way to investigate it. What do you think, like, who or what do you think that voice and or touching was? Do you think that was an angel, a devil, a God, a spirit, what?
I feel like it was a demonic entity because because the only thing that makes me, because I agree with a lot of things you say, but then I'm like, okay, what about certain people who are living certain types of lifestyles, and then they say they have an encounter with Jesus Christ, and then next you know they're completely 360. But I know drugs.
Well, 360 means they're back. 360 means they're back to do it. Yes, they do a complete 180.
Bad,
I did
yeah.
the same thing. I did the same thing earlier today because Arden jumped off the couch and said she did a 360, and I made the anyway. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
People are going to ask, why is Arden jumping off the couch? So we have stories of people who are having difficulties in life, and they pray to a God for help, and they get better and turn their lives around.
Yes,
Does that
correct.
only happen with one particular God concept?
No, it happens with others.
So if it works or seems to work with a
Mm-hmm.
variety of other God concepts, and it also seems to work with lucky socks and lucky rabbit's foot, and it also
Mm-hmm.
works when people are awakened to the harm that they are doing to others because of the problems they're doing. Why credit a God or anything? Why not just say, sometimes people are motivated by the truth. Sometimes people are motivated by fiction. Sometimes people are motivated by their desires, and their desires can be either the product of interactions with people, recognizing consequences. Maybe God is like Dumbo's magic feather, because Dumbo could fly the whole time, but he was convinced he needed that magic feather to fly until he found out he didn't. Maybe everybody who's
Right.
turned their life around on behalf of a God is actually carrying around a magic feather. They're just not aware of it yet. And the only reason that I think that is more likely is because I know feathers exist. I don't know that they're magical. I know justifications exist. I know they don't have to be true. I have no evidence for a God.
Okay.
I have no evidence for magic feathers. And so until such time as that changes, I'm not going to accept either one.
Got you. And I have a quick question. Sorry. Matt, I have a question. So when you were a Christian, did you believe in Satan, the devil, and God? And then did you have
Yes.
things where, okay, now I'm following God, okay, something so abnormal is happening to me? Would you think like, okay, it's the
Yes.
devil, it's the enemy?
Yes.
So how did you, because right now you're not a Christian, how do you
Yep.
break from that? So when nothing is happening to me,
I didn't have
sorry,
any choice.
continue.
Basically, something would happen and I would say, wow, that's the devil. And when I realized that I was only saying that because that's what the believers around me said, when I'm standing in church and I'm singing and praising and I feel elated and I get goosebumps and I feel really good and happy and I'm excited, I don't know what that feeling is. And the people around me would say, oh, that's the Holy Spirit. So I just believed it. That's what they say. They know more than I do. My parents, the pastors, everybody else, it must be the Holy Spirit. And then when I dared to question and decide that I cared more about whether or not I had good reason to believe something than whether it was comforting and whether other people believed it, I said, okay, how can I be confident that was in fact the Holy Spirit? Well, my first answer as a Christian was I can be confident by asking God to confirm it, which is already problematic because I'm assuming this sort of thing. But at a minimum, if you're asking God to confirm it and the confirmation doesn't come, all of a sudden you start going, hang on. If God's not saying, if the God that I believe in, who I believe is filling me with his spirit, who I have dedicated my life to serving, I was going to be a preacher. I was active in church more than my parents were. I wasn't forced to go to church. This was my life. This is what I believe. Now, I'm not going to say I was super believer or I did all kinds of stuff. I'm not ideal. But if God, who knows my heart and knows I'm sincere, stays silent when I need affirmation against the enemy, then God is not doing anything to help me. And if I stop thinking that God's going to do something to help me, how does that change? What does it mean? So when I realized I don't have any good reason to think that bad things happening to me are because I'm right with Jesus. I don't have any reason to think that it's because my walk with Jesus has failed or that I've fallen off the path. I don't have a reason to think it's demons, because everybody feels elation to some things. We know how music impacts people. We know how communal exercises impact people. We all feel stuff, but we feel it differently. And the feelings that I got from religion, I've also had from sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but also art, paintings, flower gardens, animals, you see the first time you see like a blue Barron's racer up close, or you get one with a slightly different color, it's just like, wow, because blue is pretty rare in nature. And it's like, this one must be special. And we do the same thing with us because we think we must be special because we think we're God's special. Not that we are gods, but that we are the ones that God's hold special. And when you sit down and think, hang on, let me act as if that's not true just for a little while in order to evaluate it. If you don't get the sort of confirmation, all those beliefs just slip away. Like if you pretend that gravity doesn't work, you're going to die. If you pretend that you can cross the street blindfolded because you have extra vision, you do that long enough, you're going to die. Or you're going to get harmed. You may not necessarily die. Nothing happens when you act as if there is no God, except that you find yourself in conflict with people who keep telling you how ridiculous you are, and they can never, ever, or have never justified their claim. I'd rather live honestly than live in fear. I'd rather care about other humans and support freedom and dignity and liberty than be sitting around judging everybody. I'd rather be judgy of stupid people who I think are stupid, because I think it's right to think that some people are stupid. And by stupid, I don't mean unintelligent. I don't mean low IQ. I mean willful, voluntary ignorance, the absolute denial of the facts of reality. Not about confusion, not about irrationality. We all do that. I've fucking done it probably 20 times in this show. I would imagine if somebody went through kind of technical errors, there might be 50. And slight errors that were more significant but not technical, maybe 10, 15. Who knows? All you got to do is to say, hey, I don't have a good reason for that, so I'm not going to pretend that I do. I apologize, Michelle. We have completely run out of time. I have to drop your call and let you go.
Thank you.
This is all going to roll.
Thank you
Please
so
call us
much.
back more. You're very welcome. Take care of yourself. For those of you questioning, you can go to recoveringfromreligion.org and do stuff there. Don't forget about all the other shows on the network. John, tell them where to go to find you and close us out, because I think the producer's going to run credits right now.
I'm John Gleason, the Godless Engineer. You can come and find me over on YouTube for with Godless Engineer. You just search me up everywhere. That's where I'm at. Thank you to all of the mods in chat, as well as our call screener and Morgan for doing the producing.